Hello. Welcome. It's another day, another stream in fascist America. Welcome. Welcome to whatever this is, an attempt at providing education, advocacy, and a little common sense in this digital wasteland. My name is Aubrey Devashri. There are a lot of current events happening, namely a war that the US and Israel started. The US is doing this at the behest of Israel, to be clear. And over oil, but not really. This is what Trump thought it was all about until Israel started blowing up the refineries. So people are now starting to realize, even more so in the conservative sphere, that Israel has a very large influence on the US, especially when it comes to foreign policy. That is starting to break through in many conservative spaces. That is pretty shocking, I have to say. Like, even reaching some of the, boomers who are full MAGA. So that's an interesting development. I want to talk about more of what's going on. Mostly I want to learn more about what's going on. Get some background details from Democracy Now! The new leader that was chosen in Iran. There was an attack at Gracie Mansion that is assumed to be for Zohran Mamdani and his wife Rama, Duwaji. And they keep trying to say it's like an ISIS-inspired attack, which is completely absurd. That's such an Islamophobic, victim-blaming type of response that these legacy media outlets are saying. That they're like, oh, the only people who would do this are ISIS. It's ISIS-inspired. No, these are white supremacists. That's what's happening. And they are not overtly saying this. And that is concerning because they have an agenda in painting Zohran in a particular light, especially since Trump likes Zohran. And so now they're having to really reach to attack him. Not just in the physical sense, but try to spin this attack. Anyway, I wanted to get details on that. Walter Masterson, who is in New York City, who goes to a lot of protests and does amazing advocacy and coverage of events that are happening in New York City, that I want to give a watch to. So is it? I want to give a watch. Anyway, there was more files that were dropped with the Epstein files, and these give more details for this assault that Trump is accused of. Let's be honest, he probably did it. And so we get that, but then also they released more personal information of survivors and victims. So, the continued aggression against these survivors and victims continues. I mean, I guess I just said that. That was redundant. Anyway, you know what I mean. It's just the intentional, it's not them being lazy or incompetent. It's them being malicious. And this is what a lot of people are not saying about it, I think, correctly framing it in this way. It is intentional to be harmful to people. Not that they're not getting it right. People keep saying incompetent, and this fascist regime is deeply incompetent, but they are also extremely cruel and malicious. And that is the primary driving factor, in my opinion, but I think I'm right on this. With all of the nonsense happening, I want to focus on some ways that we can organize a little bit because it is bleak out there and we need a strike. We need a global strike. We need a world. That's the same thing as a world strike. We need a national strike because they will not stop until we make them. And as we see with the supposed opposition party in the US, known as the Democratic Party, which is the other side of the fascist coin, they are more than willing to go to war illegally with Iran because it serves their interests, because they are serving their APAC overlords. That's what's happening. And honestly, I don't think Zohran should have... I don't think he should have shut down the campaign that v.II was going to have against Hakeem Jeffries to take his seat in his district. I think that was worth the risk politically to make, because v.II not only was and still is like an extremely talented candidate who understands community organizing and policy and how to speak to people in the ways that they understand, that like I think he could have overthrown Hakeem Jeffries. I think he could have taken his spot. And we are now seeing just how deeply Hakeem Jeffries is part of the fascist problem. We already knew this about Chuck Schumer a lot of the time. Well, I guess we already kind of knew this with Hakeem Jeffries. Anyway, they are not putting up a fight, clearly. So we need to take our power back. We need to support these, like, especially these special elections that are happening. Electoral politics are still part of the system that we have to engage with, but we also can't rely on it to save us, which is why we have to do grassroots organizing and why we need a strike. Many people have been saying this, and we need like an organizing apparatus. There is the General Strike US for this national strike that I want to highlight today and talk about their demands and the thinking behind this movement, but then also discuss what a world strike would look like to take our power back. And if you happen to know of any entities, organizations that are already doing this, please let me know. Oh, and then also, I would like to discuss more about Heathcliff in Wuthering Heights and race. Not only with this newest movie that came out, the Emerald Fennel. I don't know how she says it. I should probably look that up. Anyway. I want to talk about that. And also how it plays a factor in the book, clearly. So go over that a bit and then actually read the book. Yeah. There are heavy things happening that I think we need to be talking about, but also we can focus on, hopefully, revolutionary optimism. This is me trying to take my own advice because I can struggle with this. I will be completely honest. Things are bleak. Things are bleak, but we also need to keep chugging along. We need to keep going somehow. And this is why, or one of the reasons why, I like to start off with a funny video. And this is, again, a Patti Harrison classic icon, one of my favorites. So let's give this a watch.
Why is this animal's lip so hard?
Well, she is a meat eater, she's a carnivore, and a bird, so it's a beak.
If this animal doesn't have lips on the face, where do I kiss it?
Not really a kissable animal, not a pettable animal.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Patti Reviews. I'm here with Nature Nick and his friend Bubbles. What is Bubbles?
Bubbles is an African Barbary falcon.
Like Burberry.
Yes.
Like tacky overpriced clothes. Con, I want to get a closer look.
Like Burberry,
She knows
the
it's
brand.
She knows
Oh,
it's
If I wanted to, could I change the colors of this bird?
Of this one, no, you couldn't do it.
Con, we can't change the color of the bird. Pro,
of this
bird
one.
is
So there are
great. I have a
others.
spare leash laying around, so I just tied this
Maybe
bird
if it's
on
a
it and I swung
flamingo.
it around, and boy, oh boy, were the boys looking. Pro, this is a bird. Con, it has feathers. No bueno. Con, it is very shifty. She's looking around a lot. Doesn't seem like, you know, what we're doing right now is like good enough. Like she's got other things on her mind. Let's go. What have you got going on after this? Where are you right now? Why do you keep looking around? You're miles away. What are you? You can just tell me. If you don't want to be here, you can go. What's going on with you? You're coming home late? Your grades are dropping. Talk to me. Don't shut me out. I'm your mom.
She's looking around right now because she's a very visual animal. If you look at her, her eyes are on the front of her head as opposed to the side of her head like a parrot's would be. She's just trying to figure out where she is, what's going on.
What does Bubbles eat?
It's like, this
She's a
is the rational
carnivore, but being a
explanation.
falcon,
Excuse
she's
me.
a specialist at eating birds.
Bro, if you want a down-ass bird that's down to kill its own kind for you, this is your bird.
They won't go after other falcons. They'll usually try to steer clear of other birds of prey, like hawks, that might try to take the food away from them.
Con, not a cannibal. Pro, it is a box fan. Where can someone pick up a falcon?
Well, first you need a license.
What about like a Best Buy?
Best Buy? Don't think I saw them at Best Buy.
Pro, very exclusive. So as far as falcons go, this animal gets a 2 out of 5. Do we have a trash bag for this bird? Thank you so much, Nick,
trash
for bringing this
bag.
human into my life.
Yeah, just let go. Yeah, there you go.
If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and let us know in the comments what animals I should review next. What do you think? What a rude bitch.
The working class in this country
whoops.
has
Are giving poverty funding? Of course they are. Anyway. Okay, should we get into the headlines? You know what? Today I'm kind of wearing the gay man uniform of like a tank and a shirt over. Like, I guess that could also be like the straight frat boy uniform as well. Or the lesbian sapphic uniform. This is just the mask forward. That's what it is. Anybody who is presenting as mask in a little more of a flamboyant way, this is the uniform. Tank, shirt over top. That's what I'm doing today. Anyway, back to more serious matters. Let's listen from Amy Goodman on Democracy Now! As to what's happening in the world. surprise, surprise, not the greatest situation happening abroad with World War Epstein.
Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The United States and Israel are continuing to drop bombs and missiles across Iran, with hundreds of attacks reported in the last 24 hours alone. In Tehran, there were reports of massive explosions earlier today after Israeli attacks on fuel depots caused fires to burn for hours, spawning a thick cloud of toxic smoke over the city of 10 million people.
Jesus Christ.
It rained oil rain. Many residents complained they had trouble breathing as black raindrops full of toxic chemicals fell across Tehran. Officials warn the precipitation contains...
Yep, really freeing the people, helping those protesters be liberated from clean air, from clean water, from infrastructure, according to making Iran great again, like what Trump posted on social media. It's like, this is what, like, you can tell that there are U.S. officials that are upset about this, because this is not only just an egregious thing to do, it's also going to make gas prices go up even further. That they're realizing how truly Trump has been played by Bibi to have just complete unraveling and disruption of Iranian society itself.
Hydrocarbon compounds, as well as sulfur and nitrogen oxides. The Iranian Red Crescent Society reports 10,000 civilian structures have been damaged across Iran in U.S. and Israeli strikes, including homes, schools, and almost 36 medical facilities. Among the dead are 175 people, the majority children, mainly girls, killed when bombs struck a school in the southern city of Minab on the first day of the U.S.-Israeli attacks. On Saturday, President Trump and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth denied the U.S. was responsible for the bombing of the girls' school. They spoke to reporters aboard Air Force One.
Did the United States bomb a girls' elementary school in southern Iran on the first day of the war and kill 175 people?
In my opinion, based on what I've seen, that was done by Iran.
Is that true, Mr. Hegseth? It was Iran who did that?
We're certainly
This is using the Netanyahu playbook. Oh, that hospital, that school that we bombed. No, that was Hamas. No, that was Iran.
But the only side that targets civilians is Iran.
We think it was done by Iran.
But a New York Times investigation found direct video evidence contradicting...
The only side that targets civilians is Iran. When they're only targeting civilian places. Really?
Claims. The video shows a U.S. Tomahawk missile damage the school at the same time as a U.S. attack on an adjacent naval base operated by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Meanwhile, top officials in Iran have pledged allegiance to Mujtaba Khamenei as the country's new supreme leader after the U.S.-Israeli coalition killed his father, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, in a February 28th airstrike. Khamenei's ascension to supreme leader came after President Trump warned if he, quote, doesn't get approval from us, he's not going to last long, unquote. Trump said last week he would choose a great and acceptable leader after Iran's unconditional surrender. In Tehran, Iran's president, Masoud Pezeshkian, on Sunday ruled out any capitulation to the U.S. and Israel.
Good. The U.S. and Israel have not shown themselves to be reliable whatsoever, have any sort of modicum of integrity or good faith strategy or approach when it comes to negotiations. And there is no reason to cave to their whims when they aren't going to fulfill their end of the bargain. So good for them.
Who without any hesitation kill 168 innocent children, feel no shame for killing these children. They feel no shame for massacring 50,000 to 60,000 people in Gaza. And then they want to say that we in Iran want to kill people. We stand against those who attack our country with full force and will respond with full force.
In Washington, the State Department's declared the U.S. war of choice against Iran an emergency, allowing the Trump administration to bypass congressional approval to sell more than 20,000 bombs to Israel. The weapons are valued at nearly $660 million. Meanwhile, Democratic House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries has declined to say whether he'll block additional funding for the Pentagon's war against Iran, telling NBC's Meet the Press, quote, "We'll walk that bridge when we come to it." Iran's
The cowardice. It's not even cowardice, it's just corruption. It's the utter corruption, and there's no moral backbone. That's why it is also cowardice, too, because it's just amoral. No sort of morality that is anchoring these people, especially Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer. We can't rely on them to do the right thing because they haven't been. They have shown that, especially when it comes to brown people who are Muslim, that there is endless bloodthirst on behalf of Israel, whom they both receive hundreds of thousands of dollars, and that they need to, from AIPAC, and that they are more about their presentation and walking this line of trying to be like, oh, we want to appear like we're opposing what's happening, not be overtly against what's happening, because they are bought and sold, which is why we need a general strike in the US. We also need a global strike to stop this war, because they are going to keep going.
Military continues to launch missiles and one-way attack drones at Israel, as well as U.S. military bases across the Middle East and the countries that host them. Earlier today, Iranian strikes killed 2 people in Israel, seriously wounding a third. Elsewhere, Iranian strikes have destroyed radar, communications, and air defense systems in Qatar, the UAE, Jordan, Bahrain, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia. The attacks continued even after Iran's president issued an apology for Iranian strikes on Gulf states and said Iran would not strike targets in the region. In Iraq, fires broke out in buildings belonging to U.S. corporations Halliburton and KBR after an Iranian drone attack in Basra targeted a compound housing workers of foreign oil companies. Saudi Arabia reported its first deaths from Iran's attacks, reporting a strike on a residential area that killed 2 people.
Honestly, that's really getting to the heart of the matter in that situation of the oil people, foreign oil people, who are funding this and wanting to benefit from all of this as well. That's what is happening. And they are understanding this.
Bahrain's government reports an Iranian drone attack damaged a water desalination plant and injured 3 people. Roughly 100 million people across the Gulf region rely on desalination plants for their drinking water. Elsewhere, Bahrain's state-owned Bapco Energies company has declared force majeure, declaring it can no longer honor its contracts after an Iranian attack set its only oil refinery on fire. Meanwhile, police in Norway are investigating an explosion at the U.S. Embassy in Oslo early Sunday morning as a potential act of terrorism. No suspects have been identified in what appeared to be an intentional explosion that caused minor damage and no injuries. Lebanon's health ministry reports more than 500,000 people have been displaced in the week since Israel resumed full-scale attacks on Lebanon, with forced displacement orders affecting hundreds of thousands of people. So far, Israel's assault has killed 394 people in Lebanon, including 83 children, 42 women, and 9 rescue workers. Meanwhile, Human Rights Watch warns Israel's military has once again used white phosphorus munitions in residential areas in southern Lebanon, a violation of international humanitarian law. In the occupied West Bank, Palestinians held a funeral Sunday for 3 Palestinians killed after Israeli settlers attacked them near the village of Kirbet Abu Falah. 2 Palestinians were shot dead by settlers during the overnight attack early Sunday. Then a 3rd Palestinian suffocated to death as Israeli soldiers fired tear gas at crowds that gathered to confront the attackers. The killings bring the death toll from settler attacks on Palestinians in the West Bank to 6 in just the past week. Israel's continuing to attack the Gaza Strip in violation of the U.S.-brokered ceasefire agreement it agreed to in October. On Sunday, Israeli tank shells hit a tent encampment housing displaced families in the western Nuseirat area, killing at least 3 people, including 2 girls, while wounding 10 others, including children. Another strike in western Gaza City killed 3 men, including 31-year-old paramedic Abdurrahman Hosni Hamdouna. This follows an Israeli drone attack on Saturday that killed a father and his daughter in central Khan Yunis. Gaza's health ministry reports about 640 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli fire since the ceasefire was supposed to have taken effect 150 days ago. The Pentagon reports another member of the U.S. military has died in combat, the 7th since President Trump and Israel launched a full-scale military assault on Iran late last month. The Associated Press reports the service member was an Army soldier who died of injuries sustained during an Iranian attack on U.S. troops in Saudi Arabia on March 1st. CENTCOM also reports an 8th service member has died in Kuwait due to what officials called a health-related incident. On Saturday, President Trump, First Lady Melania Trump, Vice President J.D. Vance, and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth attended a dignified transfer ceremony at Dover.
He didn't take off his baseball hat? Jesus Christ.
Air Force Base in Delaware for 6 Army members killed by Iranian attacks on Kuwait. The price of oil has surged past $110 per barrel as Iran continues to attack fossil fuel facilities across the Middle East while bringing tanker traffic through the Strait of Hormuz to a standstill. It's the biggest spike in oil prices since the early months of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, with some analysts warning oil could hit $150 per barrel within weeks. The Wall Street Journal is calling this the most severe shock to energy markets since the 1970s. The U.S. economy lost 92,000 jobs in February, with the unemployment rate ticking up to 4.4%, according to new data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Economists were predicting employers had actually added 50,000 jobs last month, but job losses in February resulted in the 2nd largest decline in monthly job creation since the COVID pandemic.
And who was the president then, I wonder? Interesting. There seems to be a pattern that is recurring once again.
Thousands of women around the world marked International Women's Day by demonstrating against gender-based violence and calling for an end to the U.S.-Israeli war on Iran. Here in the U.S., protesters gathered at Zorro Ranch in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where the late convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein sexually abused and trafficked underage girls and young women. Protesters gathered outside Trump Tower here in New York, calling it the Believe Survivors demonstration. In France, 73-year-old rape survivor Gisèle Pellicotte led a march calling for an end to sexual violence. In Brazil, protesters expressed outrage over the gang rape of a 17-year-old girl in Rio de Janeiro earlier this year. In Peru, thousands of women marched in the capital, Lima, demanding government action against gender-based violence.
For Women's Day, what we're calling on all peasant and indigenous women is that we can't give up. We know life circumstances are very hard because climate change has devastated everything in Peru. Cities are disappearing. So what we have to do, as our grandmothers, grandfathers, and ancestors always taught us, is rise up from the dust with our native seeds. We'll keep guaranteeing life and peace, guaranteeing food sovereignty. Be strong, comrades.
The U.S. and Ecuador announced Friday they
That is revolutionary optimism. If, like, at a protest that is speaking out against gender-based violence, it's like that is what solidarity looks like. To be standing behind these issues that you believe in, and how we are also needing to acknowledge gender-based violence that is towards anybody who is femme presenting, specifically that is based in misogyny or queer or flamboyant in some way, which that is a direct result because of the violence of patriarchy and its need to assert domination through violence. And seeing that kind of stuff is very inspiring to me.
Joint operation to bomb a drug traffickers' training camp in northeast Ecuador near the Colombian border. The camp belonged to the Comandos de la Frontera, a Colombian crime group made up of former members of the FARC. Meanwhile, the Pentagon says it killed 6 men in an attack on what it called a drug smuggling vessel in the eastern Pacific Ocean. Once again, the Pentagon provided no evidence the ship had been involved in ferrying drugs, though it posted video on social media showing an attack on a civilian vessel. The latest killing brings the Pentagon's claimed death toll in similar attacks to at least 157. President Trump gathered leaders from 12 Latin American countries at his golf club near Miami over the weekend at the inaugural summit of what Trump is calling the Shield of the Americas. Attendees included right-wing leaders Nayib Bukele of El Salvador, Javier Milei of Argentina. The leftist leaders of 3 of Latin America's biggest economies, Brazil, Mexico, and Colombia, were not invited. At the summit, Trump vowed to go after drug cartels and blasted foreign influence in the region, particularly Chinese economic and political interests. The summit comes just 2 months after the U.S. abducted Venezuela's former president, Nicolas Maduro, and his wife. In Nepal, 35-year-old former rapper Balendra Shah is set to become the country's next...
The fact that they agreed to go to this, and it's like that could happen to any one of them. Any of the leaders. I mean, except for essentially the ones with nukes. Trump is probably wanting to kidnap at some point, or like wouldn't have a problem doing that. And so like you don't win when you concede to these fascists, which, you know, there are many that hold deeply fascist beliefs themselves, so they're aligning themselves, but it's like everyone loses in this situation.
Prime Minister after his party secured a landslide victory in parliamentary elections.
Except for Trump.
Election since
but everyone else in the entire world does.
Government. Shah is the former mayor
Except
of
Trump
Kathmandu.
and Bibi.
He was a leader of the Gen Z-led protest movement, which was sparked by a ban on social media and driven by a lack of economic opportunities. And civil rights leaders and former U.S. presidents paid their respects to the Reverend Jesse Jackson at his funeral in Chicago Friday. Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Bill Clinton attended the memorial service at the House of Hope on Chicago's South Side. Kamala Harris, Hillary Clinton, and Gavin Newsom were also in attendance. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks for watching Democracy Now! On YouTube. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications.
We don't need to know about Gavin Newsom or Kamala Harris for that matter. Just utter disappointments. Okay. We desperately need to withhold our labor from what's happening. What is it going to take for us to rise up and finally say no to what is happening? What is stopping us from dropping everything that we are doing and taking to the streets, not letting our wages be siphoned? It's because we're part of this hamster wheel of capitalism and the very real structures in place saying that we don't have power. And that is real. And that's where policy comes in and enforcing laws. But then there's also this part of society that's in here that says, what if we didn't buy into this system? What if we took care of ourselves and we'd finally said no to the rampant exploitation of destroying the earth for wealth and greed, for all of the, say no to all of the genocides that we're funding and are happening, unwarranted, illegal, immoral, violent aggression by imperialist forces because late-stage capitalism, that we are saying no to losing all of these jobs, that they are gutting all of these programs, these social programs, and killing people because of that. They're quite literally killing people overseas. And in Iran, in Gaza, in all of these strikes that they're doing, like in Venezuela, in Cuba, because we're starving people in Cuba. We are so disempowered in many ways, especially when we think about how one of the only things people talk about in terms of like having a voice in society is through voting. When we have representatives who are not listening to us, when we have these so-called leaders who are bent on enriching themselves at the cost of our lives, we have to take to other means. It doesn't mean we give up on that process entirely, because it's still a branch of government that can and does have an impact on our material conditions in life. But we also need to have other avenues for getting our needs taken care of. And this is why community organizing is so important, where we're able to establish a network that is not reliant on these governmental systems, that we build up enough power so that we can actually make demands and they listen to us. And these demands actually have teeth, because it's not enough to do a strongly worded letter. Our strongly worded letters need to come with clear demands. This goes for all of our aspects of protesting, whether it's protesting in a physical place, protesting against a business, like boycotting, protesting by withholding our labor. It's just a matter of getting the word out so that we can all collectively say that we've had enough, that we don't want to fund this endless bloodlust and violence against the world, that we don't have health care, that we don't have enough hospitals, that we don't have clean water, that we don't have food that isn't poisoned by the Epstein class, that our air isn't poisoned because of what they're putting into the air, that we can actually work and have leisure time, that we don't have to work multiple jobs in order to survive, that we can actually get a job in this economy, that you are treated with dignity, that you are not paid on starvation wages. And this isn't just a thing for people living in the United States of America. We have many drawbacks and privileges being in the heart of empire. But so many aspects of our oppression we feel across the globe. There are things that are very localized when it comes to policy and discrimination, but also when it comes to like these larger systems that we live under, like imperialist capitalism, that we are all subject to these people who have no moral compass. I'm not going to claim to be a paragon of morality, but I at least don't think that like the world should be squeezed dry and humans should be cannon fodder and dollar signs for these people, not beating hearts and dreams. That they don't care about us because they view us as being less than them. That they are all eugenicists because they have this delusional belief that they are just inherently better than the rest of us, when all of it is just accident of birth and the willingness to be selfish and cruel and exploitative and not have a care about who you step on to get there. That's a deeply disgusting thing, but it's also deeply embarrassing. These people who don't care about anyone. And there are very few people in the world making these decisions. The Larry Ellisons of the world, the Trumps of the world, the Netanyahus who are so corrupt and cruel and not held accountable that like we have to use one of the only things that we can at our disposal in this imperialist capitalist system, which is withholding our labor so that it makes everything come to a standstill. They need to be reminded where their power comes from, because they would not be in the positions that they are in without our collective exploitation. So this is why we need a strike, a global strike as well as a national strike. I have links to these things in my Twitch profile. The General Strike US, I'm still going to go over some of their content in a little bit. That is a link that is in the profile. So fill out a strike card, sign a strike card, submit your demands, and then also share, because we need to keep spreading the word. And I also created a world strike card that you can sign and submit your demands. I need to update the form, but still sign it anyway and submit your demands. Okay. That was my diatribe. It's just so wild how we're expected to keep functioning like the world is normal with all of this happening. Okay, so oops. They elected a new leader in Iran, and this is a middle finger to Trump, which is amazing, which is great, good for them. Essentially being like, no, you don't get to choose the leader, because that's what he kept saying last week, is that he wants to be involved with the discussions, And they're like, no, we're a sovereign nation. Fuck you. And that's great. That's what needs to happen. So let's watch this and learn more about this situation.
International Women's Day, don't they think about the optics?
Iran has named the new supreme leader. It will be Mujtaba Khamenei, the son of the slain supreme leader who was killed last Saturday in a...
That's right. The Assembly of Experts done did it again, boys. They brought in another Ayatollah Khamenei.
Israeli-US strike on the capital.
Oil futures just opened up. Hit $111 GG. Oh, great, dude. We're gonna keep winning.
What just happened there? That was weird.
Tehran. He was killed in his compound, and his son has now been named as the new supreme leader by the Council of Clerics in charge of selecting the new supreme leader. This will be the Islamic Republic's third supreme leader since it came to power in 1979. 56-year-old Mujtaba Khamenei is known to be close to the
It's happening again.
Want the names to sound so similar to confuse the West, bro. Because the first guy is Khomeini, then the second guy is Khamenei, and then now the third guy also Khamenei. It's like, bro, you couldn't throw a different name in the pile? What are we doing? Nah, we just got to stick with the naming convention.
It's not helping with stereotypes.
We don't want to etch out the the names in the directory. It's gonna f the whole thing up.
In seminaries in Qom.
White people, people in the U.S. already think they're the same
20
person.
Years,
Is it just this video? The other video isn't doing this.
This Islamic Republic is not a hierarchical system, so there was some reservation about Mujtaba Khamenei taking over from his father, but he has now been named as the supreme leader. And in the last few days, when he was believed to be the front runner, the Israeli defense minister
I'm gonna keep it a $150. This is nepotism.
the supreme leaders, all those...
That's nepotism, straight up. I'll say it. I'll say it, bro. They gave him for the name recognition pick. That's what they
named
did.
as a potential front runner or...
I mean, true. I wonder if other people are experiencing
has
this.
long opposed reformist groups advocating engagement with the West. His close ties to senior clerics in the IRGC, which dominates Iran's security forces and the economy,
Billions of dollars spent just to get a younger version.
Security institutions.
Guy.
His influence under his father is a key figure within the security apparatus and the vast business empire it controls, operating for years as Ali Khamenei.
David Cross has the new leader. He does look a little bit like David Cross. It doesn't seem like other people are experiencing this. I don't know if it's just me with this video. Potentially. I think it might be me.
Mujtaba Khamenei, 56, has long opposed reformist groups advocating engagement with the West. His close ties to senior clerics in the IRGC, which dominates Iran's security forces and the economy, give him leverage across the state's political and coercive security institutions. He amassed influence under his father as a key figure within the security apparatus and the vast business empire it controls, operating for years as Ali Khamenei's gatekeeper and, in practice, a mini supreme leader, analysts say. The U.S. Treasury sanctioned Mujtaba in 2019, saying he represented the supreme leader in an official capacity despite never holding elected or formal government office. A Gulf source familiar with regional government said, thinking of Mujtaba's appointment, This tells Trump and Washington that Iran will not back down. They will fight on until the finish. Salem of the Middle East Institute likened Iran's trajectory to Iraq under Saddam Hussein after 1991 or Syria under Bashar al-Assad after 2012. Governments have survived years of war and isolation but steadily lost control. They're doubling down on the hardline, Salem said. Internally, it's terrible and deeply destabilizing. Okay, maybe it's not so bad then, because I felt like when these guys say that the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was a hardliner, I don't think he was. I think there are hardline in terms of what? Because they wanted to negotiate with the West. Khamenei wanted to negotiate with the West. I don't think that's a controversial take at all, especially because they did allow the JCPOA to go through. They followed through on the JCPOA. They were nowhere near as aggressive as they're presented in the West. Now, his son might be different. I don't know. The IRGC pledge allegiance. Iran's Revolutionary Guard says they are ready to follow new Supreme Leader Moshtaba. A middle finger to Israel from the regime, but like his father, it will take years for him to consolidate power. For now, expect the informal council to continue running things. The president, parliamentary speaker, judiciary chief, and reps from the IRGC and regular military. Yeah, most likely. Well, we just killed his family, so maybe it might be different. I don't think these guys give a shit, bro. I think that the real pressure is going to come from within, because the IRGC has been waiting for this moment in some respects, and they cleaned up all the older ranks. For the longest time, I kept repeating over and over again, if you recall, that Ayatollah was the most restrained figure that we would deal with in the West. Restrained to a fault.
Yes.
Strategic restraint.
Exactly. Throughout it. Yes, it is because of restraint in all of these conflicts that we have not been in World War III, because of the restraint of Iran.
Was the name of the game. I think it caused Western forces to feel far more powerful. It made them think that Iran had no capabilities of withstanding American bombing campaigns. It created a sense of weakness to a fault. It is precisely the reason why the multiple decades long initiative of building a serious axis of resistance fell apart, because one of the major red lines in said axis of resistance, especially in the last decade, was that if Israel actually put boots on the ground in Gaza, that they would pummel Israel. Now look at the amount of weapons they have at their disposal right now. If Syria still existed, as it did post-October 7, and Hezbollah had not been decapitated and diminished, and the Houthis are just still the Houthis, obviously, that doesn't really change that much. And the IRGC still had its Quds forces in both Syria and also in Iraq. And they mobilized against Israel very quickly after October 7 for Israel's violation of said red lines. You'd be looking at a very different calculation in the region, which is what I think Yahya Sinwar wanted to do. That's not a lot of ifs. That was literally that's not a lot of ifs at all. That was the whole ball game. And what I'm trying to say is Iran's restraint at that time, over and over again, when Israel kept violating more red lines and kept slowly but surely, alongside the United States of America, took out Iran's axis of resistance in the region piece by piece, and then Syria fell entirely. It was over. From that point on, Iran was much more diminished in its reaction or its retaliation to Israel. I don't know if you would have seen a different calculation or you would have seen a quicker U.S. intervention. I mean, think about the U.S. intervention that's taking place right now, though. Now imagine a much more powerful axis of resistance that wasn't destroyed over the course of the last 2.5 years, very successfully, mind you. I don't think if the United States of America right now can't withstand and can't successfully defend its own assets in the region, can't defend its most powerful ally, the only country that they care about, Israel, successfully. Israel's defenses have been deteriorating. Israel cannot even do early enough warnings for its citizens right now. If they waited a couple months and then they were like, all right, you've gone too far, and they came in and reacted, we'd be looking at a very different calculation, which I think was that was what Yahya Sinwar thought would happen. But the reason why I brought all this up is not so I can get clipped to be like, see, Hassan is like so pro-Iran. He's saying Iran should have retaliated, whatever. The reason why I brought that up is because There was one guy who was against that. There were forces within Iranian military that were for it, certainly. The IRGC being the hardliners, the real hardliners, the ones that were much more pragmatic and understood what was necessary. But the Ayatollah was not one of those guys. He was the final setback. He had the final say. He was the one who kept repeatedly saying, no, we can negotiate. We can negotiate. Obviously, like the civilian governance side, the president, foreign minister, those guys are all moderates. They're always moderates. That's more so to throw a bone to the public, to be like, see, we're listening to your demands.
I need to step out for
Western
a sec,
attitudes
but I'll be right
matter
back.
if and only if they result in political change. Exactly. Will people be thrown out of office based on their foreign policy takes? Don't want to bring up recent drama, but even leftists are eager to cover over NATO supporting warmongering if it comes in the right package. Yeah, I know. But again, it's utterly irrelevant regardless. Whether people are pro-NATO or anti-NATO, it still doesn't matter. Do you see what I'm saying? I mean, you and I agree on this. It only matters if we can actually make this change. It only matters if we can create enough pressure, enough domestic pressure that the administration has to back away. So in some ways, when like my haters or our haters are like, you're doing the bidding of Iran, it's like, it's true, I am. I'm doing the bidding of the Iranian people that don't want to be killed. Not the Iranian government. It's the Iranian government's bidding as far as the Iranian government cares about making sure that the Iranian people survive. I'm anti-war for that reason. I'm anti-war because I don't want to kill Iranian people. I don't want to destabilize this country with 93 million people. I want to reduce harm. I want to avoid harm. I want to stop this senseless bloodshed. Public celebrations around Iran tonight. So loud. Someone needs to inform these guys that there's a white Californian who has concerns about nepotism. Regime supporters in Iran reacted to the news that Khamenei's son has been chosen as supreme leader. Conveniently, they don't even have to change their chant. Allahu Akbar, Khamenei Rahbar, meaning God is great, Khamenei is the leader, though it's unclear how long that will last.
Allahu Akbar.
Why would they elect a man on International Women's Day? Don't they think about the optics? Oh, damn, chatter. Someone needs to ring him up. Breaking, Israel's now claiming they will try to assassinate the new leader of Iran and murder anyone involved in appointing them. It is impossible to overstate how deranged these people are. Oh my God, bro. It's like, I'm telling you, it's like a rabid dog. Like, it's like having to live with a mutated pit bull with rabies, dude. It's insane. They're just like, meow, I didn't get my wishes across. It is a lunatic state. Norm is right. It is truly a lunatic state. This is lunacy. Oh my God. Oh, so cool that they have nukes, by the way. And not only do they have nukes, but they also basically dominate American politics as well.
If Iran wants to be treated like a normal country, let it act like a normal country.
Many months later.
A standing ovation by US lawmakers for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
And get the most powerful hegemonic superpower in the world to do their bidding. Fantastic. Good group of guys to give, our foreign policy over to. The Israeli military warned it would continue pursuing every successor of Iran's next supreme leader. In a post on X in Farsi, the Israeli military said it would also pursue every person who seeks to appoint a successor for the slain supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, referring to the clerical body charged with selecting Iran's next supreme leader. It truly is like an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. Like, Iran's like, okay, you. And Israel's like, we're going to keep killing you. We're going to kill you extra hard. We're going to kill you dead. Uh-oh. Trump saw the oil prices. Trump now says $100 barrel oil is a very small price to pay and calls anyone who disagrees a fool. Short-term oil prices, which will drop rapidly when the destruction of the Iran nuclear threat is over, is a very small price to pay for USA. Oh, they are dumb. Oh, they're stupid. Oh, they're this stupid. I can't believe it. It's unbelievable. Oh my God. He truly is JD Pon. He truly is JD Pondon. It's not even a joke. He wants the suburbs to scream. He wants to kill every American Treatlerite. He said permanent first world genocide. It's crazy. Nah, this is the one area where the hogs and hogettes will not play around. This is the one area where I don't think they're gonna like that. That's why he kept saying over and over again. But
yep, oil prices when it comes to gas. That's true.
Price of gas is so low. The price of gas is so low. Don't you love it, folks? Well, now the price of gas is not so low.
Ali, what can you tell us about what we can expect now that the Supreme Leader has been named?
Well, now, first of all, that Mujtaba Khamenei has been announced officially as Iran's third Supreme Leader. This is the end of a chapter and the beginning of a new chapter at the time of war. So Mujtaba Khamenei is now supposed to lead the country in the time of war. Of course, this election would have a lot of controversy given the fact that he's...
They're announcing it like it's the Pope. I mean, it kind of is. It's not like completely the Pope, but yeah.
Succeeding his father. There are going to be accusations of family succession. You know, the Islamic Revolution came in 1979 to end the monarchy. So this is going to be one of the issues that he will face as an accusation. Yet he will have to lead the country at a very difficult time. There are security threats to him. The United States, Israel, both are threatening to kill him, just like they did with his father. So there is going to be a lot of challenges facing him. First of all, to lead the country in the time of war, and at the same time,
I would say so.
Make sure to bring together the Iranians.
What a way to have a first day on the job.
Divided, you know, just a few weeks ago, there were protests in the country. So it's going to be a really very heavy challenge for him.
Do we know much about who he is? I mean, we obviously know who his father is. We know who his family is. But do we know much about him, what he stands for, and what he could stand for going forward, given that we are in extraordinary circumstances?
Wait, this guy also fought in the Iraq War? I guess it makes sense. His dad did too. I guess most people in power did. I mean, Arakshi, the guy that you guys all call handsome, the foreign minister, he also fought in the Iraq War. Oh, he was 17. Okay, that makes sense. The Sayed Mohammed Morandi, I think that's his name, right? Like, he also fought in the Iraq War. He got gassed. Yeah, they had hella child soldiers in the Iraq War.
Well, Mujtaba Khamenei comes from the school of theology that is known to be, I mean, it's described as a hardline school. It's he adopts the positions of his father with respect to the United States, with respect to Israel. So we are expecting a confrontational leader. We're not expecting any moderation. We're not expecting any negotiation-seeking leader. However, if this...
Yeah, Morandi moved from the U.S. to Iran in 1970 and fought as a child soldier in the Iran-Iraq War, yeah. He still has his photos from back then on his Twitter profile. It's like,
war comes to an end, and he is still alive, and he is able to continue running the country. There is going to be a big potential.
People in the chat being like, call handsome. He is handsome. Why are you trying to distance yourself from this?
Him there at this position to find the new routes for Iran. This is one. On the second side, he is, of course, a cleric that's been teaching the highest levels of religious studies. And at the same time, he is well connected within the country. He's been described as a shadow influencer in the country. And over here, I'm talking about political influence.
Right.
So he has a very good connections with the IRGC, very good connections with the security body of the country.
So these other branches of the country will know who they're about to be dealing with.
They know him very well because he used to be his father's gatekeeper. He is a continuation of his father's reign for 37 years.
I'm gonna get more water.
See another Khamenei
Be right back.
coming to power. However, we're seeing a younger Khamenei, probably with also some new ideas. He's not a copy of his father, but
the influence may be there
we've
still.
never heard him talking.
Right.
We've never seen him except in some very rare pictures. So we are yet to hear from him, and we are yet to see how he is going to deal with the new status quo. I mean, his country is in the middle of war. How is he going to deal in the situation of war? How is he going to emerge from this war? These are all going to kind of define his own leadership.
And given that we haven't seen him speak publicly, that we don't know much about maybe which track he is going to take, for people who may have been thinking that potentially a new supreme leader could be a route to diplomacy, a route to opening those diplomatic channels, in your estimation, is that likely to be the case?
Well, for now, no. This is a confrontational leader. Now, how is he going to be received by others? Because inside Iran, of course, there's going to be a pushback. There's going to be those who are going to criticize this selection or this election, because some of them will believe, especially within the other parties under the Islamic Republic, they're going to see this as changing the pillars of the Republic and changing the pillars of the revolution that came in 1979.
So there's many things to watch. I want to bring Mohammed Val back in from Tehran for us, because Mohammed, one of the things that we've been talking about is how Israel has been saying that they will be looking out for who is named the next supreme leader, that person is in danger, that person is in their sights. And so,
like, my attitude is, maybe I'm wrong on this, but my attitude is, it's just the hardliners anyway. They have their support, they have their base of support. And it kind of feels like they've given up on having like a unification pick, like having a unifying pick. It's not like Khamenei was unifying the public regardless. I mean, he was, by the end, there were a lot of people who were very frustrated with him, to say the least. So I think this is just moving in that same direction. So the base loves it, and they only care about the base. But we'll see. We'll see how he moves, especially because like that's like domestic policy. That is not something that is relevant right now, right? It's not relevant at all, because the country is going to be unified regardless currently, because America's blowing it up.
I wonder, how do you think they're going to be able to secure him, or what kind of danger he'll be under as of right now that his name's been announced?
I'll be back.
Right, that's a very big question here in Iran, and also the election of Mujtaba Khamenei is clearly an act of defiance on the part of the Iranian leadership here, because he's the man President Trump mentioned in name, saying that he's a lightweight, and he's in the position now that Israel has threatened to kill him anyways. So, I mean, it's really a precarious situation for the new supreme leader, and probably the delay in announcing his name has to do with preparations to make sure that he's safe. We don't know how that is going to be done, but we know that the Israelis just 2 nights ago sent 50 aircraft and dropped 100 bombs, according to what they said, on a location that was, they said a bunker that was to be used by the late Khamenei, but he didn't have time to go into it, and that they had information that probably some of the leaders were hiding in.
There's something very funny about the way that like Israeli Israeli society operates, like Israeli military operates, where they genuinely think that like if you do a decapitation strike, like it's over. And I don't know why they have this attitude. It's just like they already killed Ali Khamenei. It didn't work. So it's very funny to think that they are probably going to try to assassinate him as well. And if they do that, that's just going to piss Iranian society off further, right?
In that bunker the night the raid took place. So the Israelis are really...
It may be projection. Really? Projection? What do you think would happen if Benjamin Netanyahu got assassinated? You think Israeli society would go, oh, we're saved? No, no, they would get extra mad. To think that it would be very, like, obviously we're not talking about how we would feel in that situation. We're talking about Israeli society, right? Nothing changes.
Okay, what Iranians won't say publicly about this war is something that I want to watch. I think I'll watch it tomorrow. Okay. Just to break things up. How about we play oh, great. Was I not supposed to do that? Oh, no. I just played a video instead. Okay. This is the Words on Stream game. Start. Okay. Just break some things up. Basin. I want to say obsidian, but I would need a lot more letters for that. Sun. Excuse me. Is there like a timer thing that's on the chat? Probably. Okay, I'll figure that out. In the meantime, I'm gonna play my other game. This is the text twist one. Okay. Regime. How fitting. Rhyme, mire, here, mirror. Already did that. Rig. Grin. Mergy. I'd almost want to do Mirage, but G. So there's one more big word that I need to get. Emerge. Erg. I looked this up the other day and it didn't make any sense to me. Erg, it's like a measure of something. Me? That'd be with a Y. Emigre. What does that mean? Someone who has immigrated a lot. An immigrant. A person who emigrates for political reasons. Émigré. Émigré France. A digital type foundry. Okay, so an immigrant, especially one who has fled their home country due to oppressive political conditions. An immigrant is any person who has emigrated or is emigrating, permanently leaving home in one country or region to settle in another. While immigrants can emigrate for a number of reasons, the word émigré typically implies that someone has fled political oppression or political conditions that they strongly disagree with. The word émigré is sometimes used in a more specific way to refer to a person who has fled from France before, during, or after the French Revolution, which began in 1789. Such émigrés were often aristocrats who feared that they would be targeted by violence during the revolution or otherwise opposed it. The related word immigrant refers to someone who moves to a place as opposed to away from it. Of course, émigrés are also immigrants since they have to settle somewhere after they leave. The word is sometimes seen without the accent marks as émigré. Example, thousands of émigrés fled Germany during the rise of Hitler in the 1930s. Okay. Heated. Heat. Heated. Heat. Fortunately, that's something we're familiar with in the throes of American Empire. Date. Death. Dad. Red hat. Eight. Ada. Head. Heed. I have one more. Ha ha ha. Digley. Gildy. Edgley. Ah. Interesting. Lied. Lied. Led. Lay. Ding. Die. Guild. Leg. Idly. Lead. I know that's a word. I don't know what that means, though. Gel, deli, guild, idle, and yield. Interesting. Curve, rude. Do, cured, cure. Rude. Dukes. That's not how you spell it. Crud. Okay, I guess it'll count that. Greg. Damn, I had one more. A crew. Deepen. Dope. Don. I shall don my cap. Nope. Depone. I don't know what that means. Okay, this will be my last one. Guess we'll see if I get it. Augury. Gas. Sugary. Sugar. I start immediately with gas. Sag. Rags. Rars. I don't know what that means. Gray. Gays. Okay, that's homophobic. Do not include gays in there. Guy. They just gave me that one. Thank you. Rug. Yes. I got it just in time. Okay, I have to do one more. Morons? I recognize that word. Mormons. Moons, rooms, moors, mourns, soon, sun, mons, that's a word. Orson. No. Sewer. I don't know. Sonar? That's with an A. Nom. Norms. Oh, I got all of those wrong. Well, that's that. Okay. Whoops. Okay. So we saw that Gracie Mansion in New York City was attacked. This is the place that the mayor lives. So Zohran Mamdani and his wife Rama Duwaji, that they were endangered because of this. And then there are some people, some outlets, we know who they serve, that they are trying to claim that it's these ISIS-inspired devices, when really it's white supremacists who are doing this kind of violent aggression. So let's watch this video by Walter Masterson, who is covering the event and is part of the organizers.
And then tell everyone else.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
Yes, that was me in the video.
That
we
is
were counter-protesting
crazy.
Jake Lang. For those of you that don't know, Jake Lang is the man who famously lost to the letter S. I cannot stress enough how this did not look like a real bomb. We were all right there. None of us ran away.
It didn't look real.
Right? We looked at it and said, this is a very funny prank. You can even see the photographer pushing out of my way saying, yeah, let me get a good shot of that. The police had to shove us all out and say, get away. We don't know what this is. The two idiots that did this didn't run. They ran 20 feet, stopped. This happened on 87th Street. They ran halfway to 86th Street, not even a full city block before stopping. They literally stayed there for the cops to grab them. Very stupid, not thought out at all. Very dumb people. They're either very stupid or they're working for the CIA or a combination of both. You cannot convince me otherwise. Very dumb behavior. Like, they literally did not run. There's a lot to say about what went down. So let's go to the next group of unfuckable dorks, Ian McGinnis and Frankie Scales.
Straight, for everyone. Straight. Go. All right, go. Hey. Hey. Oh, stop.
They felt so scared being around women that they pepper sprayed my sister. Yeah, they pepper sprayed my sister, who was not touching them, not hitting them.
What?
She was several feet away, but they felt scared. The funny part is that when women pepper spray them,
when the aggressors are feeling scared,
put it on the internet to show that they're the victim. These two guys were going through the counter-protest area, and they were trying to get gotcha clips, asking gotcha questions. I jumped in and said, yeah, I'll answer your questions. And they didn't like that. They didn't want someone educated that could give comprehensive answers to the questions. Watch this.
What do you think about illegal immigration?
What do I think about illegal immigration? Like, which part?
Do you support ICE?
No, I do not support ICE. If there's USCIS, there's tons of different law enforcement services. Do they solve violent crimes? No. Do they stop crime? No. Are they investigating? No. We have the FBI with a dozen other alphabets within the DOJ that do that. ICE just literally goes into communities and starts garbage with everyone and starts violence. They contribute nothing.
Do you consider it a crime to enter this country illegally?
Well, the United States considers it a misdemeanor to enter this country illegally. And now here's the thing is, most of these people that come in here are coming to the border, surrendering themselves at the border, surrendering themselves and saying, we're here. Yeah. I was starting to make too much sense for the guy, and I couldn't do the gotcha.
So the Confederate flag is the Democrat flag?
Originally, yes. I mean, they ran against Lincoln, and once they lost to Lincoln, when they ran against him, they lost to Lincoln, they started a war. But today, that flag is now supported by the Republican Party. Every Republican state, Republican district flies the Democrat flag. Makes no sense to me.
Why did the Republican Party say they support the Confederate flag?
Why did they?
Where did the Republican Party
look at any time? That's a great question. Look at any time they tried to take down Confederate statues. The Trump administration, they took down a Confederate statue in D.C. and the Trump administration put it back up.
Okay.
So, I mean, anytime they have tried to remove it, the Republicans put it back up.
Oh, yeah, we gotta go because that made too much sense and I didn't really like it.
Yeah, I was making way too much sense for that guy. They didn't want a comprehensive answer. They wanted no one's illegal on stolen land, open the borders, river to the sea. They wanted to clip something for rage bait. Both of these guys are uneducated, unintelligent, and their talking points don't stand up to scrutiny, and they don't stand up to someone like myself that can actually have a real conversation with them. Their friend Nick Shirley tried that with me, and I embarrassed Nick Shirley for 10 straight minutes. You can find that video. And if these two right-wing influencers are watching, my sister is gonna knock you the fuck out when she sees you. You don't have to worry about me. I'm not gonna come looking for you. But my smaller, more petite, younger sister, she is hell-bent on knocking you out. The guy pepper sprayed so many people that the NYPD actually arrested them. Shocking. The NYPD protected this group of Nazi incels at all costs. These guys were being protected by hundreds of NYPD.
Let's go, Crusaders! This is our country!
Yeah, when we talk about getting Klansmen and Nazis out of law enforcement and the government, that would solve many problems.
So let's get to the actual protest. Jake Lang
Why do they have a
started the
goat?
protest by bringing out a pig that he was going to roast because, you know, it's not halal to have pork, but it's also not kosher. So he's insulting Muslims and Jews, and he did this in front of an Israeli restaurant.
Oh my God.
Because he's an idiot. Because he is an idiot. Minnesota, he was supposed to, the governor and the mayor were under like extreme pressure to protect private property. So they had SWAT teams and everyone guarding all the local businesses when Jake showed up. They didn't guard him. I mean, it's the police. Their number one priority is private property. So they protected the private.
It's not here, not in New York.
They protected the private property, and then because they were under like national pressure, and that's why the only reason he had no police escort when he came, he got his ass kicked.
I was wondering.
Yeah, he got his ass kicked because if you went on the perimeter, there was, I mean, SWAT level protection of every private business, and it was amazing.
Well, I guess in New York City it goes Nazi, then private property.
Yes, yes.
It's like order is it is in that order here.
Yes. It's like the Borat. It's like, you know, man, horse, you know, woman, dog, woman, and then little Krexili. Yeah. Is he getting kicked out?
Go home, Nazis! Keep on crying. Keep on crying, you piece of shit. Keep on crying. Go home, Nazis!
This is very typical. So these white supremacists show up, they talk shit, and then hide behind the cops. It's very funny.
Yeah, Edward, figure it out, bro.
I mean, well, yeah, that too. Wait, I'm a Nazi. Can I get an escort too? Wait, I also hate women. Can I get a police escort? Are they escorting him back to the protest site? Are you fucking kidding me? They really escorted him back to the protest site so he could continue being a white nationalist.
Okay, I've had enough of this. On one hand, it's like we need to be talking about how these types of things are escalating, but also I don't want to give them that much like screen time. But it's great that there are people running these shitheads out. This is where social shaming is very useful, and something we should be engaging in is how it is disgusting to view people as less than you, in that the cruelty and selfishness is so embarrassing and tacky. Just utterly devoid of any sort of sense of self-worth that then is imposed on other people because they are feeling insecure in their delusions. Okay, so talking more about what we can do to fight back against what is happening. Let's look at this video by the General Strike US. What are our demands? And oh, here we go. I'll share the link to this in the chat. Okay, just pulling this up. Here we go.
Peace and power. My name is Day. I'm here with the General Strike US, and today we're answering the question a lot of people ask us: what are your demands? So to understand our demands, you must first understand the kind of world that we are fighting to build. Our demands aren't about reforming a dying system or picking a new ruler. They're about liberation. So we're fighting for a world where people, not corporations, not politicians, not empire, hold the power. Our demands center dignity, basic needs, self-determination, worker control, and an end to the war and exploitation. So we build, we share, and we take power back into the hands of the people. So when people ask us about our demands, the first thing to understand is, that they're not traditional policy bullet points. They're about liberation. They're about reshaping society from the ground up and not getting a nicer version of empire or replacing one imperial politician with another. So our demands are rooted in three things. That will be human dignity, collective power, self-determination for all oppressed people. And we're talking about things like reparations, land back, freeing political prisoners, universal basic needs, reproductive justice, queer and immigrant safety, worker control of the economy, and dismantling the war machine. So these aren't your typical ags. We cannot vote our way out of oppression. We cannot vote our way out of fascism. These are the foundations of a free society. So we want, people over profit. We want community over empire, liberation over reform. And our power framework sums it up. That is people over profits, our right to self-determination, working class liberation, equity and autonomy, and resistance to empire. And by building our own systems, as food, safety, worker organization, and many more, we lay down the groundwork for dual power, parallel structures that can grow strong enough to compete with the institutions that we're fighting against. You know, what starts small becomes infrastructure. So a food program becomes food sovereignty. A neighborhood safety team becomes community defense. A worker committee becomes worker control. Our demands challenge the system because they point us towards building what will one day replace it. This is how we build, we share, and we take power. And we'll definitely refine the exact.
It's about becoming less reliant on these structures that are built to fail us, the people, and empower capitalists, specifically the ruling class, the Epstein class, people with levers of power at their disposal and money, so capital once again, and building something that is outside of it. While there are still many aspects that that machine controls in our everyday lives that we have to engage with, like when it comes to elections, that can affect the material conditions for people. It's like we still need to engage with that, but yeah, like what they're saying, it's the situation is not fixed by voting, by this system that they are calling democracy, but they are the ones who are defining what that means and if it is actually equitable and fair and where power is distributed more evenly.
Demands in phase 2 of the strike initiative, you know, with experts, with coalition partners, community, and our chapters. And until then, we have to say we stand firmly, you know, for these principles. We don't wait on the system to grant us rights. We organize to take the power back. All power to the people.
Super fierce. Okay. If you have not looked up General Strike US, please do. Sign a strike card, submit demands, learn more about who they're partnering with. Okay. Moving right along. I wanted to get Florian's take on the new Wuthering Heights movie because Heathcliff in Wuthering Heights is described in very racialized terms of having darker skin and hair, but also he is called the G slur a lot. So it is not specified as to what race he is or what his heritage is. And this is part of the plight that he is put in the book, is this erasure of identity and having identity imposed on him by this colonial imperialist, because the British Empire, white supremacist, elitist system, and how he is perceived by the other people and how that informs his development, and also how that informs how other people treat him. Okay. Excuse me. Hello, Tan. Welcome, welcome. Good to see you. How are you doing? See if I can get this working.
A new Wuthering Heights movie is being made starring
Here we
Margot
go.
Robbie and Jacob Elordi, who's presumably playing the main character Heathcliff. If you're not familiar with this classic book, Heathcliff was described as a dark-skinned gypsy. In fact, he was insultingly called the racial slur gypsy multiple times throughout the book, and other racially charged language that makes it explicitly clear that this character is either black or brown. The racism that Heathcliff experiences is actually a key part of the story. So what do we have here? It's not even that I want Heathcliff as a character, as a Romani representation. I don't want that. In fact, his characterization as a Romani is rooted in anti-Roma racism and stereotypes, particularly those associated with dark-skinned people. That's why he should be played by a dark-skinned person. Not to knock their acting abilities,
You're
they're both
good.
great
Glad
actors.
to hear
You
it.
can't act dark-skinned. Not
You're
even
doing
gonna get
all
into the
right.
racial history of all
Just
that. No, I really wouldn't care about stuff like this if there was actually Romani representation in Hollywood. However,
Wondering
every single
why
Romani role gets whitewashed. Every single
there's
one. An
constant
extremely problematic trend that just
imperialist
keeps on happening.
aggression, but
All these years of
also
Romani characters being misrepresented in media. All these years of them being called gypsies and put into all these
focusing
stereotypical tropes.
on
You want to just pretend like none of that ever
organizing.
existed. Which again, doesn't solve the problem. A new Wuthering Heights movie is
And
being
also
made starring
things
Margot
that
Robbie and Jacob Elordi, who's
interest
presumably
me.
playing the main character
Keep some
Heathcliff.
sort of
If you're not familiar with this
revolutionary
classic book,
optimism, I
Heathcliff
guess.
was described as a dark-skinned gypsy. In fact, he was insultingly called the racial slur gypsy multiple times throughout the book, and other racially charged language that makes it explicitly clear that this character is either black or brown. The racism that Heathcliff experiences is actually a key part of the story. So what do we...
Okay. So that is Florian's take. He is Romani, and it is true. Heathcliff is overtly described in racialized terms from a very colonized perspective. And there's this video that I've been wanting to see by Princess Weeks, who discusses this fact that Heathcliff is not white and how
last time on
there has yet to be a man of color cast in the role of Heathcliff in an adaptation when it comes to the films. And how this is just like a deep misreading of the text and not understanding like why he acts in some of the ways that he does. Keeping it fierce despite what the algorithm sends your way. We're trying over here. It's stuff like this of like turning to things that I enjoy of like, okay, how do we strike a balance of being informed, but also understanding what we can do about it, and also finding ways to like find some lightheartedness in this hellscape. And literature, I'm such a nerd. Literature is one of these things for me. Wuthering Heights. To be honest, I did not like this book when I read it for the first time. I was like 11 at the time because all of the characters I found to be deeply unlikable, but that's also kind of the point. And they're all very human and fallible, but it is also from a specific time period of the British Empire where we need to focus on decolonizing the book in order to fully appreciate it. So, shall we watch this?
a pendulum. I mean, Princess Weeks. And that racial ambiguity, that racial difference is why he's treated so poorly by the people around him and why things are denied to him. Despite this explicit racial otherness, people will still act weird if Heathcliff is not depicted as a white man. So, you know, the ball is in your court, Emerald, because she's making an adaptation of Wuthering Heights. So,
okay, so this was before. I'm guessing it was just announced at the time that the movie was coming out. Yeah, okay. So October 29th, 2024. The Brontes were an abolitionist family. Emily absolutely knew what she was implying in her words regarding Heathcliff. I didn't know that they were an abolitionist family. It's crazy. I mean, they still can speak in like racist ways. Like, so it doesn't mean that they are like, we're like, oh, you are like me. and deserve what everyone else deserves as well. It's crazy because Emily Bronte was not subtle. Like, she used every single word to clarify Heathcliff is not white. Yes. And that is the first thing everyone notices and comments on about him. Exactly. Okay. I'm excited to watch this. Same. Nerds rejoice. Yes. What are you nerdy about? Literature is a means by which our flexible nature can shine on care and compassion. That is such a beautiful way of saying that. Oh my god, Tan. You can tell you like literature because of the way that you say that. You read a lot. Are you reading anything right now?
Oh, it's time. Well, that was a mistaken bit of faith. I can't say I'm surprised, but I'm still disappointed. And when I went to TikTok and X, and I am no longer there, you can find me on these platforms instead, to discuss my disappointment. There was a lot of lamenting, but as expected, a whole lot of, well, actually, about Heathcliff's ethnicity, what he is, and sadly, but again, not shockingly, quite a bit of anti-blackness coming from complete rejection of the idea that Heathcliff could be partially black.
Judith Butler's
As a result,
essays.
I read all of Wuthering Heights. I found a bunch of academic articles and channeled all of my rage and frustration around that anti-blackness into this.
I love how Princess Weeks, the creator of this, is just taking this rage and putting it into something that's like so informative and necessary. It's really fierce.
So here we are talking about Heathcliff, because nothing aggravates me more than people acting as though I can't read. I can fucking read. Emily Bronte was part of the now legendary Bronte literary and artistic family, and one of 3 Bronte sisters who would become novelists. There was Charlotte, author of Jane Eyre and Villette, Anne, author of Agnes Grey and the Tenant of Wildfell Hall, and Emily, the middle sister, who published Wuthering Heights in 1847 and died 1 year later at just 30. Wuthering Heights is a Gothic novel about the passionate and destructive love between Charlotte Earnshaw and Heathcliff, the adoptive son of Mr. Earnshaw of mysterious heritage. The narrative encompasses 2 generations, starting from when Heathcliff is brought to the Earnshaw home and raised among the family. Catherine and Heathcliff form a deep bond, but Catherine chooses to marry Edgar Linton, a wealthy neighbor, despite her attraction and love for Heathcliff, because she wants a high-value man, and Heathcliff don't have that money or the breeding that is necessary for a woman like her.
I shall be rich. I'll be the greatest woman in the neighborhood.
Heathcliff then leaves Wuthering Heights and returns many years later, a much wealthier man seeking revenge, psychologically and financially. This cycle of revenge is perpetuated to now encompass the next generation of young children. Essentially, Heathcliff married the sister of Catherine's husband in order to really just stick the knife in there. It's very Count of Monte Cristo, but much shorter, and also very Targaryen, because at the end of the book, Catherine II marries her first cousin, and just no one is considering the implications of that, which is weird. I'm also reading Mexican Gothic right now, so that's I'm very much locked into that whole like, okay, so we're doing incest again. Another one. Wuthering Heights was...
Yes. I love that she talks about this. I love The Walking Dead. To be honest, I don't remember. I've only seen a few episodes of The Walking Dead, but people love it. People love it. This theme of incest is constant in the Gothic art movement, which is concerning. We should be concerned about this, of like what was happening in society at this time to like kind of normalize this in so many art forms. So her calling it like a Targaryen move is very accurate.
published, it was considered controversial because of the subject matter and dark tone. Many reviews, even those who found it deplorable, also talked about how compelling the book was. In the whole story, not a single trait of character is elicited which can command our admiration. Not one of the fine feelings of our nature seem to have formed a part in the composition of its principal actors. In spite of the disgusting coarseness of much of the dialogue, the improbabilities of much of the plot, we are spellbound. I mean, that sounds like a Goodreads review today. Reading it myself, it was very easy, especially in the first half, to be totally drawn in by the compelling dynamic between our leads. It is told through other narrators.
I'm
so we
not
don't
sure. I'm thinking that it's that he's a Heathcliff, but that's also like, okay, he's just like another white guy playing Heathcliff. Why are we doing this again? But he's a good actor. It's not that they don't get good actors for these roles. It's just like, can we like be true to the text a little bit?
know everything, but the outside perspective is enough to stimulate the imagination and give us like a really insight into these two people in love. As destructive and genuinely toxic the match between Catherine and Heathcliff is, the fact that their vices are so much at the forefront of their romance makes it interesting. Heathcliff and Catherine's dark dynamic has gone on to be misunderstood by youths everywhere and an inspiration for melodrama for generations. Heathcliff has become one of the most well-known Byronic
I had no idea what that was
in the Western canon, to the point where you wonder if people
Laurence
mostly
Olivier,
ignore
I
the
think.
second half of the book, or just really like all the corpse hugging and child abuse. The book has been adapted to the screen
Yeah,
several
that is.
times. The most notable adaptations
Playing
being
the role of Heathcliff is kind of a rite of passage for certain like classical actors.
the 1939 adaptation with Merle Oberon and Laurence Olivier.
Which Merle Oberon is actually Indian, but she's white passing. So we got a person of color who is cast as Kathy before Heathcliff, who is actually written as a person of color. Just like the whitewashing is really wild.
It all turned out just as you once suspected, Cathy. That I had been kidnapped by wicked sailors and brought to England. That I was of noble birth.
The 1970s version with Anna Calder Marshall and Timothy Dalton.
You know you lie to say that I've killed you. I could as soon forget you as my life.
The 2009 two-part series with Tom Hardy and Charlotte Riley.
Oh, please, Cliff. Oh, I shall think it a dream tomorrow, and I'll be able to believe that I've seen and touched and spoken to you once more.
And Andrea Arnold's 2011 film adaptation that cast a mixed-race black actor as Heathcliff, with James Howson in the role and Kaya Scodero as Catherine.
How could you not think of me all this time?
You fought to me too, it seems.
This is the first adaptation I've seen that actually has casted him as a person of color.
I just heard you got married.
When this casting choice was made by Arnold, and she also allegedly did seek out Roma actors for the role as well, it triggered a massive conversation once again about what exactly Heathcliff's race and ethnicity could be. After all, as I mentioned very extensively, even though it doesn't feel that way because of some of the comments I've gotten in my video about tall, dark, and racially ambiguous, for many Western novelists in the 18th and 19th century, when they called a character dark, it did not necessarily indicate that they were not white, because they would use that same term to describe people who were French, Italian, Greek,
Yes.
etc.
Exactly.
However, I'd argue that Heathcliff is a different kind of example because of how explicit and integral his otherness is to the book. I myself am not Roma, and I've already seen so many people tell me things on TikTok that I know are not true with a lot of confidence. So I'm going to keep things cited and linked to a Romani creator who I follow down below, and just places where you can find more in-depth insight. Oh, my cat is scratching herself. Look at her little boo. I love my cat. Sorry. Citations will be down below because I don't quote all of them in here, but they
Same.
all came in part of framing what I am going to say.
Freedom in thought!
see
When it
the
comes to
Roma
Romani and
creator.
Irish travelers, they are often used in 18th and 19th century literature as a convenient other that
Florian.
contemporaries
Nice.
would already have impressions of, mainly through stereotypes. English, French, Spanish, a lot of Western Europeans especially had and still do have a built-in stereotypical image of Romani people. I remember going to Paris like almost a decade ago. Ugh. And having our tour guide tell us to beware of
crossing herself.
pickpocketing Romani children. He didn't use
Oh my.
Romani, that word, but I remember even that moment thinking to myself, like, what is this, the Hunchback of Notre Dame Disney version? Like, I don't understand.
Yeah.
Like, we're still talking about people like this. As Americans, we don't have the exact same
Exactly.
cultural language or identity around the Romani. Yes, there was that show that was on TLC. That's very different from the experience in Europe, especially with the way that slur has been normalized in songs. On Broadway shows, as the name of formerly incarcerated persons turned influencer adjacent people.
Yes.
So we just have a very different relationship to that identity and that word through the way that we have consumed art here in the Americas, even though it still has a massive impact in the way that a lot of works were written. In Deborah Epstein Nord's Marks of Race, G Figures and Eccentric Femininity in 19th Century Women's Writing, she says, if English literature of the 19th century contains within it a constant ubiquitous marker of otherness, of non-Englishness or foreignness, it is a figure of literary origins and anthropological interests. Could signify social marginality, nomadism, alienation, and lawlessness. So this is where I spoil everything and state that I do think Heathcliff is most likely Romani, and I think that that is the best casting choice for him in general. It ties very neatly to the archetypes of the time, but we are also going to get into why it's still very ambiguous as we go further along in this video. But I start this to illustrate something that is key to Heathcliff and something that most marginalized ethnic groups can understand. Perception matters more than reality, because looking a certain way is enough, because racists and TERFs all love to assume that they can spot the difference, and that obsession with keeping things separate of class, race, gender. Those illusionary barriers are more important than facts, which is why ultimately, while we are having this discussion, it doesn't actually matter what Heathcliff is. What matters is that because he is darker in some way, people perceive him a certain way.
Yes,
that
and
he is
he's
not
treated
white
a
enough.
particular way.
Throughout Wuthering Heights, there are multiple references to Heathcliff's skin color and his assumed ethnicities and races. Here are all the examples. If I missed any, feel free to add or put a page quote in there, but I took receipts because people are annoying. And so this is what I have to do to show that I did indeed read this entire book.
True.
But I just basically went through, and anytime there was a mention of like his race or like other plot details, I kind of just highlighted it so that I could have it to prove to you that I read the book. And I hate to be that video essayist who explains everything like this, but considering again, the comments that I get, I feel like this is necessary because this kicks a lot of people's asses in general. The difference between race, ethnicity, and nationality. So race is a social construct that categorizes people based on their physical characteristics and in particular their skin color. And despite how important it is, race is not a biological reality, but is a social and cultural concept. I am Black. That is my race. Ethnicity refers to a shared cultural language, customs, traditions. It's about cultural identity rather than just your appearance. So people of the same race can have different ethnicities. I am Black, but my ethnicity is that I am of Black, Afro-Caribbean ancestry and Scottish. You know, that's what I am. But because I'm also born in America, that is my nationality, a lot of my way that I talk, the way that I move, the way a lot of the ways that I do this, my hands, my attitude, the way that I speak is because I grew up in Brooklyn. And so like that is all a part of what creates the monstrosity before you. Discussions of Heathcliff's ethnicity and race are not new conversations where Wuthering Heights is concerned. As you can see, he is clearly referred to at certain points as being Romani and Roma using the G word as a slur. He's also referred to as resembling a Lascar. Throughout the entire etymology of that word, it was used to describe sailors from the Indian subcontinent, Southeast Asia, the Arabic world, British Somaliland, or other lands east of the Cape of Good Hope. Finally, saying that he looks like an American or Spanish castaway, and the fact that he was found in Liverpool alludes to the possibility of enslaved African ancestry. Liverpool is really important because it would become the most heavily involved European port in the Atlantic slave trade. During the Civil War, it was the most pro-Confederate place in the world outside of the Confederacy itself due to the benefits that it got from the cotton trade. Now, if you know date, understand it and say, well, Wuthering Heights was published in 1847. The slave trade was ended by the time that Wuthering Heights was published. So, like, why would it matter that Heathcliff is found in Liverpool? By the time that Wuthering Heights is published, the slave trade has ended. However, the book takes place in 1801 and that's the current timeline, and it goes back to the past at least 30-40 years, which means that in the context of the book, the slave trade is on and popping. So that means that for the book itself, the slave trade is very much on the table as a possibility and an illusion as to why Heathcliff would be found in Liverpool. And also why he would be racially ambiguous, but could also be coded as something other than a black person, because they have more references to the Romani identity than they would for a mixed race black person. Due to the very nature of colonialism and racism, mixed race black people existing in port cities, non-white people existing in port cities in general, was a thing. And I think that it's so interesting that when people talk about the context of the period as a way of saying, well, like, she clearly meant dark this way, not dark this way, it really excludes the fact that at the time that this book is written, in fact, for about a giant chunk of the literary existence that we're talking about within the Western canon, Black people existed. Spoiler alert. One of the most frustrating aspects about having the conversation about Heathcliff's identity and saying that he was not white, that he was, you know, Romani, Indian, or black, and people being so angry about the idea of him being black as a bridge too far, as if the idea that he had black ancestry made no sense at all. It has no basis in the reality of Wuthering Heights itself. As I've shown you from the lines before, he's inconsistently described throughout the entire novel. The scope is...
Okay, just to quickly interject, there is so much invisibilization that happens in these texts to people of color and marginalized people, and like with queer people as well, and people with disabilities, where there is this sort of, like, artists project their own prejudices and biases from society onto their art. And then we can see more of, like, what the environment was like at the time. But to not acknowledge it means that we're not getting the full story, and that it's erasure.
Is open to darker skinned people, which includes a mixed race black person. This doesn't mean that I'm against the idea of him being Romani or Indian, because I actually love some of the fan cast. One of them has the actor who played Armand from Interview with the Vampire. I love it. But I hate the assumption that is rooted in anti-blackness, that black people just want everyone to be black. Like, no. You have a colonial mindset, and you think that the success and representation of one group, especially a group that has worked very damn hard to get the representation, means cannibalizing other kinds of representation. Because we are seen somehow as having too much. And it is already deeply, deeply fucking annoying. To get personal, this idea that there's some kind of context missing that I don't understand. To just talk my shit for a second. I have a master's degree in English. I wrote my graduate thesis on colorism in fairy tales, okay? Don't tell me that I have no idea what I'm talking about. You assume that because you assume ignorance because of the way I look. You assume all these really silly things when most of the time, especially those Witcher comment videos, they'll live with me forever. I'm on your side about all the criticism that y'all have, but y'all just refuse to not be racist and sexist when you do it. And that's why we can't. You know what I'm saying? And even going back to just myself, my own background, while my concentration was theory, I also loved 18th and 19th century literature. Just studying it on that level for my master's program meant I had to...
That is so interesting to study fairy tales from the lens of colorism, of like how there's this colonial mindset of like white always meaning purity and righteousness, and blackness and any sort of racialized language as well, like, and also just like color itself meaning like evil and fighting against it. That I think is a really interesting thing to study.
Learn a lot about the context of which these books were written. My favorite book, if I want to be bougie, people ask what my favorite book is, I'd be like Clarissa by Samuel Richardson. Okay? Because that's, if I say that, you know I've read the bitch, because that shit is very long. But just in studying at that master's level meant I had to learn a lot about European history in those periods to understand the cultural context through which those books were written. And as someone who believes, for the most part, in the new historicism and cultural materialism schools of criticism, one of the first things I do is look at the context of where the author comes from. And then, yes, as a Black person, I do think about where Blackness fits into these narratives, especially when it takes place during a time period where slavery was actively happening, because that means that we're interacting with them whether we like it or not. So when I made my video, Tall, Dark, and Racially Ambiguous, and I took the time to explain that certain...
I love that title. That's brilliant. I need to watch that.
White ethnic
I'll watch
groups,
that on
we just talk
another
about
stream.
like, you know, race versus ethnicity, groups like the Irish, the Spanish, the Greeks, etc. We're not included, the Welsh, we're not included in the way that other white people viewed the superior ethnicities within the white races. I said this loudly and explicitly, and yet still got a bunch of comments of people trying to Euro-splain to me as if I was missing some alleged, like, information. And I find this, frankly, deeply obnoxious because, to be quite clear, I may not be a historian, but I cite my sources when it comes to topics like this. And it's deeply annoying to have people act as though, A, I didn't explain all of this at the top, and then B, to act as though these issues don't have a clear evolution from those white ethnicities to the way that it impacts things today. Just a few weeks ago on TikTok, there was a dialogue happening about people who read the book Fourth Wing and see a main character as Black, getting massive pushback about that because the character was dark-skinned, but he has wavy hair, therefore he could not be Black.
And a black-ass nigga with white.
While a lot of you guys are very concerned with the context of your precious Western canon, you ignore, very ignorantly in my opinion, the fact that through the transatlantic slave trade, we are now part of your Western canon. Yes, we are. I just had to get that off my chest because I have to say those comments are very annoying. I make mistakes, don't get me wrong. I misspeak, I mispronounce, I definitely own my L's. Like, there's a bunch of them, I get it. However, I do my best to research because I don't like to look stupid or sound stupid. But going back to Wuthering Heights, right, and the Brontes, by the time that Emily Bronte wrote Wuthering Heights, we don't know if she knew any people of color, but she knew they existed. I mean, do you know who is a literal contemporary of Emily Bronte? Frederick Douglass. They were born the same year. In fact, his best-selling autobiography was published 2 years before the Brontes began publishing their books. If Emily Bronte simply read classic female writers from the...
Colorism, oh, I know, right? Whose dominant culture gets to give nuance over meaning and evil? Exactly. Especially when these are created, like these myths, a lot of the time to, like what you're saying, whoever is in power to indoctrinate kids specifically, who gets to be good and what is considered good in these situations. Like what type of behavior are they monitoring, as well as like who are they teaching are good and evil based on identity and these gender roles that they're trying to reinforce. And most of the time it's coming from like a very colonial perspective where it's like co-opting more indigenous myths or traditions or beliefs and then using it to reinforce these colonial power structures, which is very nefarious. But I mean, white supremacy. That's classic white supremacy.
Generation before her, or even her contemporaries, she would be aware of Maria Edgeworth's Belinda, Claire Didora's Oruka, and Thea Ben's Orinoco. These books, problematic as most of them are, included Black characters. The transatlantic slave trade created a new economy reality that was tied to the buying and selling of human lives. Within Emily Bronte's lifetime, the most important and profitable slave port in England was in Liverpool. And you think she just put it there as a coinky dinky?
This is the little gentleman I met in Liverpool who has accepted my invitation to pay us a little visit.
I've mentioned those other books have Black characters, but we also know that Jane Austen's Mansfield Park, which was written and published in 1814, the Bertram family, which is the main family in the story, makes their money through slavery.
Do tell us more about the Negroes, dear.
Yes, the mulattoes are in general well-shaped, and the women especially well-featured. I have one so easy and graceful in her movements, and intelligent as well. But you know, strangely, two mulattoes...
Let's see, what does it say? I'll turn off the captions. The 90s adaptation of Mansfield Park pays a lot of attention to this element, which is amazing. Like, this is why I always say, like, literature is way more revolutionary and concerned about, like, human rights. I mean, even if, like, coming from these different time periods, they're still speaking from, like, a colonizer context in white supremacy, that they also tend to, these, like, film and, like, TV adaptations of things intentionally take away from the more, like, revolutionary aspects of commentary on oppressive societies and how people resist them, or how it has had a lasting effect on people and how people operate within these systems of oppression and their different roles that they play. That's a very interesting and necessary conversation that gets erased a lot of the time. Like, with even these examples of Little Women, it's like there was much more of, like, an abolitionist, pretty overtly, like, take in the text, in the literature itself, that most of the films do not address. And that's really tragic, because it's this erasure, even as problematic as these portrayals still are, it is an erasure of this type of nuance that happens, and how we should be engaging and reflecting on what happens in history and how we still perpetuate these systems of oppression today.
Can never have children. They're like mules in that respect.
Excuse me, Father, for contradicting you, but that is nonsense. You cannot say such things.
And a discussion of what the book says about Austen's politics around slavery has been heavily speculated as a result.
We need to be doing that more often with people these days, I think. You cannot say these things. But, like, when people are saying bullshit that's unacceptable, like, you cannot say these things. You just can't. Definitions are important and seldom align. Truly, though. And who is defining what or whom? And are the people who are being defined, do they have control over how they are being defined, or how their voice is being shown? Or can they define themselves outside of the other people who are trying to do the defining?
Team, she was against it, so at least my white phoebe won't be embarrassing me in the streets. But even if you look at Jane Eyre, written by Charlotte Bronte, Mr. Rochester's wife, Bertha, is a Creole woman from Jamaica. Her mental illness, her hypersexuality, and how she is presented against Jane in the novel has always read to me as part of the Victorian and earlier mentality that the climate of the West Indies isn't good for young women, how it, changes them, how their approximation to Blackness is corruptible. One of the speculations of Heathcliff's answer,
it's perpetuating these themes that are in the interest of the British Empire and this, like, genocidal colonial project at the time to justify all of this cruelty.
ancestry is that he's Mr. Earnshaw's own bastard. And the idea of a white man of the gentry having an illegitimate mixed race child and raising them in the family, or at least adjacent to white power structure, is also something that you would hear about when it happened. It was, again,
Yeah, also, I just recently learned this, that the Bronte's dad was Irish, and they understood and saw that he also, I mean, it's not the same as having melanin in your skin at the time, but they also were not clearly defined as being white either, as like kind of this in-between stage and like all of this nonsense about, you know, like racializing people and stuff. That like they saw at the time how their dad was treated, that he was treated as not being part of, like, they weren't accepted in this upper class, and that largely had to do with him being Irish, and how like they would be aware of this situation, how people can be viewed in racialized terms. That doesn't mean that like they still aren't perpetuating the same like colonizer mindset, but it shows that it's a factor. And when the adaptations whitewash everything, it's just a complete invisibilization of how things were written to begin with, but also like from the construct of living in these societies that are highly racialized. That's like, we are still living in societies that are highly racialized. They look different, but because we can see in the past how things were, we can see how they have changed over time, and hopefully see why we should be looking for like liberation outside of these things. Whereas the whitewashing of it all is just like, oh, this is like a fun, cutesy story of, you know, these like upper class white people just running around falling in love. And it's like, no, the original text engaged with these societal commentaries, especially when it comes to like these systems of oppression, whether they're like perpetuating it or not, they were still engaging with it.
Not super duper common, but we do know that there are two fairly prominent examples: Dido Elizabeth Bell and Chevalier de Saint George, both of whom have movies about them. And again, I'm not saying this is super common, but when it happened, it was especially notable to people with education. Belle's family was notable. Her uncle, the man who helped raise her, delivered the judgment on Somerset v. Stewart, a case that decreed the right of an enslaved person on English soil to not be forcibly removed from the country and sent to Jamaica for sale. It literally started a new wave of abolitionist talking points. You have the Dumas family, and then you have the Chevalier de Saint George, successful,
the last book we read,
Black
Robin Hood,
mixed race people who would have been relevant to someone like the Brontes. And I think you need to understand that in the 19th century is when you really see the birth of the tragic mulatto stereotype really taking root in literature. And while it's more prominent in American literature, there are mulatto characters, and I'm using that antiquated term because it's kind of to allude to the antiquated way it's done. There were mixed race or tragic mulattoes or mulatto type characters in what we consider now classic literature. There's one of them in Vanity Fair. If you watch the movie, that's where that character that Henry VIII rejects, that is an actual mixed race Black person from in the book. While we're so distant from it now, there is an entire context to which there is a lot of actual anxiety amongst the elites about what it means for these mixed race children to exist. Economically, socially, morally, because a lot of them were conceived through rape. And I'm not saying the Brontes were aware or locked into all of them, but even if they just read books, they would be aware. Emily Bronte's contemporaries included people who would be aware of enslavement.
Exactly. And they also read a lot. And from what it sounded like, their dad would let them read a lot of his books. It wasn't just books that were like, oh, these are the young ladies' books. He let them read a lot of his own books that he had. So they had access to a wider selection of books than what women did in their class at that time. Probably because, I mean, not like this is always the case, but like maybe perhaps he was like understanding marginalization more and could relate to them wanting to have access to a different world that people are denying you. I don't know. That's me just projecting or my
Abolition.
perception.
At the very least, because she was educated, she would have access to other female authors who talked about these issues. Jane Austen, in her unwritten novel Sanditon, wrote about a mixed race character referred to as a mulatto. It is the limit of imagination, and honestly a limit on the people who you would call titans of English literature, to act as though they all wrote with a limited mindset. I believe that Bronte left Heathcliff's identity open to interpretation because she was challenging her contemporary audiences. Non-white people in these stories are often there for romantic reasons. The dark other against the fair white feminine. Their race, their ethnicity isn't as important as what they represent. And I can also say, as someone who is chronically online, white people don't know how to decipher race. Like, y'all are very bad at it. Like, we have seen that time and time again. Like, the amount of comments about Meghan Markle, like, you guys get confused. It's very, very weird. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, that because of how the 18th and 19th century writers saw dark and black features, it is possible that Heathcliff is not a man of color and would be someone that we would consider an Irish traveler or, like, Spanish or French, that he's not even a Romani. Like, he's just a white man with tan skin. In a modern adaptation of that work, and I don't mean modern as in, like, in the present day, but I mean, like, the context of today. In a modern adaptation, that doesn't work, I feel. The outsider status of Heathcliff is only further elevated by making him explicitly a man of color. It only adds to what is already there. It's absurd to present reading Heathcliff as a man of color and wanting him to be cast that way as somehow pulling away from the core of the book. A modern day UK and American audience will not be reading or absorbing Wuthering Heights the way a contemporary to Bronte would. I'm not saying we need to throw everything out, obviously, but someone like Jacob Elordi does not match up with what a contemporary today image of the struggles of a darker skinned man, Heathcliff, in the context of the book, absolutely does, because he is dark. And I think that it's not just him just being typical dark. It is him being dark, the way he laments his coloring, the words that he uses. All of it in context is not the same thing as, like, Jon Snow being dark in comparison to Rob. Like,
yes.
And I emphasize darker skin because I think that it's important to talk
He's
about
also
how color
he's
plays
treated
into all of this,
in
even
a
amongst,
different way.
white ethnicities. When the casting for Jon Stewart just came out, people were justifiably upset because a key factor that was intended when Jon Stewart was created and became the Green Lantern, even though two white men created him, was to be a counter of the dark-skinned, angry black man. That's why he was even based off Sidney Poitier, who in his own way represented the respectable dark-skinned black man in Hollywood. Like, this is it. There's a reason why this happens. And even if you want to pick, a spicy white, as we would say, then maybe pick someone who's more visibly Greek. Pick someone who visually looks like an other. And that's not what Jacob Elordi looked like. Even watching the Tom Hardy one, which I think is enjoyable, the way that they try to make Tom Hardy look like Heathcliff, I'm just like, he and Andrew Lincoln are right there. I'm like, it's the same picture, bruv. The final thing I've heard people say,
like, why are you marginalized? Exactly, what's going on?
To be like a non-white anyway. He's not a good person, and when you read the book, he is really fucked up. But I think what's important besides that is how Heathcliff is molded into being the stereotype of what people wanted him to be. When you get villains and antagonists who are built around stereotypes because they're non-white people, and then there's a chance to adapt them and make some significant changes and add depth, we should give the chance to correct them from people in those communities. It allows someone with the experience of being discriminated against based on their heritage into the story. And why is that a bad thing? How does that hurt Heathcliff? All this to say, Emerald, I'm disappointed in you. I had no expectations, but I'm still bummed because, Wuthering Heights is a classic. And I think that whenever you get an opportunity to really allow the nuances of something like that to be at the forefront, it's really engaging and interesting. And it would have just been cool to see, like, an actual Romani actor, an Indian actor, a lighter skinned but still visibly black actor in that role with someone who has the budget and ability to really go all into it. Because I think, like, we also
And also someone who can, yes, speak to personal experience on the screen and behind the screen as well, so that it's not just someone thrown into a situation where they're like perpetuating even more stereotypes of like, okay, we need to have this made by people for people who come from these communities, because it is important to have control over stories and perception.
want non-white villains. Like, Heathcliff decided that he's gonna get revenge on all the white people who disrespected him, like on an ancestral way.
My plan was to see your face, get revenge on Hindley, and then kill myself.
I really just want people to check their anti-blackness and to stop trying to use like the context of the 18th and 19th century writing style as a way of sort of like trying to use that as kind of like a boom gotcha. Like they don't mean dark like you N-words. They mean dark like us Greeks. And I'm just like, Savannah, slow down. It can be multiple things. And I don't think it needs to be a competition.
Using the name Savannah.
When you bring up the context of the 18th and 19th centuries and then pretend as though slavery and enslavement and the existence of the new class of mulatto characters, of mestizos, and how all those things interact, you're also being ignorant. It's very interesting to have a lot of European people come and explain why we Americans, especially Black Americans, even though I'm not Black American, but I am perceived that way, that we don't know anything, but y'all come and don't know anything about us or our struggles or what we're dealing with, but y'all are so mad. You should work on that. Anyway, I listed some sources down below that talk about race and gender in the 19th century literature. They help me frame this piece and I think provide some insight into the landscape of what other academics are talking about when it comes to race. And again, I think it's really important that when we are talking about adapting the classics, that we are adapting them not just by adding diversity willy-nilly, but by actually taking the time to understand what it can do to the story, how it can elevate the narrative, and to do it well. So maybe it's actually a blessing that Emerald isn't going to do it, because I haven't liked any of her movies or her season of Killing Eve anyway. So I mean, good for Jacob Elordi and
Yes.
Robbie, I guess.
Challenging how people see certain topics is such an important part of media literacy. To not just argue certain points, but actively listen to one another. Anime, for example, is a topic that can so often get bogged down by niche infighting that takes away from the actual important character and context study that can be done. That's why on Nebula I started my exclusive series Anime Court, where I talk about the anime I love, but also character and story issues within certain series. When it comes to learning about how to go beyond mainstream, there's no better place than Nebula. But Nebula is not just about my content. Some other reasons to consider joining: the ad-free viewing experience for all content on Nebula, and early access to content from your favorite creators, including myself. Nebula even has exclusive prestige originals. Two of my favorites are Dracula's Ex-Girlfriend, a new short film about two former rivals reconnecting over drinks and a quick bite, directed by Valentina V, starring Morgana Ignis, Abigail Thorne, and Brandon Rogers. Now I have two friends who have played vampires now. How exciting. There is Trying to Make Sense of the X-Men Cinematic Universe Timeline, which I love beyond words, by Lindsay Ellis. I grew up with the 20th Century Fox universe. I remember seeing X-Men in theaters with my mom. That opening sequence was amazing, and I've been Team Magneto ever since. It is a fun, nostalgic romp that I think shows how something like the X-Men was impacted by the MCU
I'll also
superhero
include
genre
all of the
template,
links in
despite
the
being
Discord
a definite
this.
game changer when it came out on its own. Nebula is a place where creators can do what they do best without worrying about algorithms or monetization issues. It's a space where we can explore complex topics, share our passions, and connect with our audience in meaningful ways. You can sign up using my link, nebula.tv/princessweeks, to get 40% off an annual subscription. Your support helps independent creators like me continue to produce the content you love. Thank you.
Oh, this is an excerpt. The tyrant grinds down his slaves, and they don't turn against him. They crush those beneath him. You are welcome to torture me to death for your amusement. Only allow me to amuse myself a little in the same style. So this is after he is jealous of Kathy when he comes back. And he's flirting with Isabella. And refrain from insult as much as you are able. Having leveled my palace, don't erect a hovel and complacently admire your own charity in giving me that for a home. Reading, watching all things Judith Butler. Because of her. I need to do that. I've only read, like, smaller excerpts from her. I need to engage more fully with her work. Okay. Shall we read? So, getting out my gloves. We're on chapter 5. And we just finished where young Catherine, who is the daughter, so Kathy, who is the daughter of Catherine and Edgar Linton, she has finally met her cousin Harriton, who lives at Wuthering Heights, who is the son of Hindley, the older Catherine's brother, and his wife. But her dad is going to get Isabella's son, who also seems to be Heathcliff's son as well. So, we'll see what happens with them. And they now have crossed paths, and this will forever change their relationships with their families and themselves. So, like, the younger generation, seeing how there's, like, certain kinds of love almost, like, reincarnated, I guess. Okay. A letter, edged with black, announced the day of my master's return. Isabella was dead, and he wrote to bid me get mourning for his daughter, and arrange a room and other accommodations for his youthful nephew. Sad. Catherine ran wild with joy at the idea of welcoming her father back, and indulged most sanguine anticipations of the innumerable excellencies of her real cousin, because she didn't view Harriton as being her real cousin because he was too low in class for her, and she was offended by it, which is like, okay. The evening of their expected arrival came. Since early morning she had been busy, ordering her own small affairs, and now attired in her new black frock, poor thing. Her aunt's death impressed her with no definite sorrow. She obliged me, by constant worrying, to walk with her down through the grounds to meet them. Linton is just 6 months younger than I am, she chattered, which is the name of her cousin, who's Isabella's son and Heathcliff's son. As we strolled leisurely over the swells and hollows of mossy turf under the shadows of the trees. How delightful it will be to have him for a playfellow! Aunt Isabella sent Papa a beautiful lock of his hair. It was lighter than mine, more flaxen, and quite as fine. I have it carefully preserved in a little glass box, and I've often thought what pleasure it would be to see its owner. Oh, I am happy! And Papa, dear, dear Papa! Come, Ellen, let us run! Come run! She ran, and returned and ran again many times before my sober footsteps reached the gate, and then she seated herself on the grassy bank beside the path and tried to wait patiently, but that was impossible. She couldn't be still a minute. How long they are! She exclaimed. I see some dust on the road. They are coming. No? When will they be here? May we not go a little way? Half a mile, Ellen? Only just half a mile. Do say yes to that clump of birches at the turn. I refused staunchly, and at length her suspense was ended. The traveling carriage rolled in sight. Miss Cathy shrieked and stretched out her arms as soon as she caught her father's face, looking from the window. He descended nearly as eager as herself, and a considerable interval elapsed ere they had a thought to spare for any but themselves. While they exchanged caresses, I took a peep in to see after Linton. He was asleep in a corner, wrapped in a warm, fur-lined cloak, as if it had been winter. A pale, delicate, effeminate boy, who might have been taken for my master's younger brother, so strong was the resemblance. but there was a sickly peevishness in his aspect that Edgar Linton never had. So he also is not being described in the racialized terms that Heathcliff is described, so he is more white passing and will be treated as such. The latter saw me looking, and having shaken hands, advised me to close the door and leave him undisturbed, for the journey had fatigued him. Kathy would fain have taken one glance, but her father told her to come on, and they walked together up the park while I hastened before to prepare the servants. "Now, darling," said Mr. Linton, addressing his daughter, as they halted at the bottom of the front steps, "your cousin is not so strong or so merry as you are, and he has lost his mother. Remember a very short time since, therefore. Don't expect him to play and run about with you directly, and don't harass him much by talking. Let him be quiet this evening, at least, will you?" "Yes, yes, Papa," answered Catherine, "but I do want to see him, and he hasn't once looked out." The carriage stopped, and the sleeper, being roused, was lifted from the ground by his uncle. "This is your cousin, Kathy Linton," he said, putting their little hands together. "She's fond of you already, and mind you don't grieve her by crying tonight. Try to be cheerful now. The travelling is at an end, and you have nothing to do but rest and amuse yourself as you please." "Let me go to bed, then," answered the boy, shrinking from Catherine's salute, and he put his fingers to his eyes to remove incipient tears. So again, it's important to be talking about gender and how he is immediately described as effeminate, as being weak, that he is pale, he has this proximity to whiteness, but he is also viewed as sickly and will kind of develop this almost alien, Christ-like figure, which a lot of the time is very ableist in nature, of saying well, this person, they're very sick, and so therefore they're God. And it's okay, he's still a person as well, but we also have these intersections of marginalization, but he still has proximity to whiteness that he experiences. So it's an interesting take on how society perceives him. "Come, come, there's a good child," I whispered, leading him in. "You'll make her weep too. See how sorry she is for you." I do not know whether it were sorrow for him, but his cousin put on as sad a countenance as himself, and returned to her father. All three entered and mounted to the library, where tea was already laid. I proceeded to remove Linton's cap and mantle, and placed him on a chair by the table, but he was no sooner seated than he began to cry afresh. My master inquired what was the matter. I can't sit on a chair," sobbed the boy. "Go to the sofa, then, and Ellen—" whoops. I was speaking in Ellen's voice. This is Edgar. "Go to the sofa, then, and Ellen shall bring you some tea," answered his uncle patiently. He had been greatly tried during the journey, I felt convinced, by his fretful, ailing charge. He also is sad. His mom just died. And he's like, "Don't cry." Just and by crying, it makes him effeminate. Okay. Linton slowly trailed himself off and lay down. Kathy carried a footstool and cup to his side. At first she sat silent, but that could not last. She had resolved to make a pet of her little cousin, as she would have him to be, and she commenced stroking his curls and kissing his cheek. Oh, so he has curly hair. And offering him tea in her saucer like a baby. This pleased him, for he was not much better. He dried his eyes and lightened into a faint smile. "Oh, he'll do very well," said the master to me, after watching them a minute. "Very well, if we can keep him, Ellen. The company of a child of his own age will instill new spirit into him soon, and by wishing for strength he'll gain it." Aye, if we can keep him, I mused to myself, and sore misgivings came over me that there was a slight hope of that. And then, I thought, however will that weakling live at Wuthering Heights, between his father and Harrington? What playmates and instructors they'll be! Our doubts were presently decided. How dare you expose an ailing young man to the lower classes? Uh-oh. Okay. Our doubts were presently decided, even earlier than I expected. I had just taken the children upstairs after tea was finished, and seeing Linton asleep, he would not suffer me to leave him. Till that was the case, I had come down, and was standing by the table in the hall, lighting a bedroom candle. Or I can turn the page. Uh-oh. Haha. There we go. Lighting a bedroom candle for Mr. Edgar, when a maid stepped out of the kitchen and informed me that Mr. Heathcliff's servant, Joseph, was at the door and wished to speak with the master. I shall ask him what he wants first, I said in considerable trepidation. A very unlikely hour to be troubling people, and the instant they have returned from a long journey. I don't think the master can see him. Joseph had advanced through the kitchen as I uttered these words, and now presented himself in the hall. He was donned in his Sunday garments, with his most sanctimonious and sourest face, and holding his hat in one hand and his stick in the other, he proceeded to clean his shoes on the mat. Good evening, Joseph, I said coldly. What business brings you here tonight? It's Maester Linton. I spake to, he answered. I must speak to, I guess is what that's saying. He answered, waving me disdainfully aside. Since it's like written in a way, like how it's forcing you to speak and pronounce these words in a particular way. Mr. Linton is going to bed. Unless you have something particular to say, I'm sure he won't hear it now, I continued. You had better sit down in there and entrust your message to me. Which is his room? Pursued the fellow, surveying the range of closed doors. It's spelled like Ram, yeah. I perceived he was bent on refusing my mediation, so very reluctantly I went up to the library and announced the unseasonable visitor, advising that he should be dismissed till next day. Mr. Linton had no time to empower me to do so, for he mounted close at my heels, and pushing into the apartment, planted himself at the far side of the table, with his two fists clapped on the head of his stick, and began in an elevated tone as if anticipating opposition. Heathcliff has sent me for his lad, and I mun go back bout him. Back without him? Edgar Linton was silent a minute. An expression of exceeding sorrow overcast his features. He would have pitied the child on his own account, but, recalling Isabella's hopes and fears, and anxious wishes for her son, and her commendations of him to his care, he grieved bitterly at the prospect of yielding him up, and searched in his heart how it might be avoided. No plan offered itself. The very exhibition of any desire to keep him would have rendered the claimant more peremptory. There was nothing left but to resign him. However, he was not going to rouse him from his sleep. Tell Mr. Heathcliff, he answered calmly, that his son shall come to Wuthering Heights tomorrow. He is in bed and too tired to go to the distance. You may also tell him that the mother of Linton desired him to remain under my guardianship, and at present his health is very precarious. Noah, said Joseph, giving a thud with his prop on the floor, and assuming an authoritative air. Noah, that means nowt. Heathcliff makes no account to mother, nor ye norther. What does this mean? Ugh. Takes no notice of the mother, or you either. Okay. Good to know. Let's see, where was I? But he'll have his lad, and I mun take him, so I know you know. You shall not tonight, answered Linton decisively. Walk downstairs at once, and repeat to your master what I have said. Ellen, show him down. Go. and aiding the indignant elder with a lift by the arm, he rid the room of him and closed the door. "Vera well," shouted Joseph as he slowly drew off. "To morn he's come himself and thrust him out, if ye dare." So, tomorrow he's going to come himself and thrust him out if you dare. Okay, that's the end of that chapter. Let's see how long this other one is. 6. Okay, I'll start on this next one. Chapter 6. To obviate the danger of this threat being fulfilled, Mr. Linton commissioned me to take the boy home early on Catherine's pony, and said he, "As we shall now have no influence over his destiny, good or bad, you must say nothing of where he has gone to my daughter. She cannot associate with him hereafter, and it is better for her to remain in ignorance of his proximity, lest she should be restless and anxious to visit the Heights. Merely tell her, his father sent for him suddenly, and he has been obliged to leave us." Linton was very reluctant to be roused from his bed at 5 o'clock, and astonished to be informed that he must prepare for further traveling. But I softened off the matter by stating that he was going to spend some time with his father, Mr. Heathcliff, who wished to see him so much. He did not like to defer the pleasure till he should recover from his late journey. "My father?" he cried in strange perplexity. "Mamma never told me I had a father. Where does he live? I'd rather stay with Uncle." "He lives a little distance from the Grange," I replied, "just beyond those hills. Not so far, but you may walk over here when you get hearty. And you should be glad to go home, and to see him. You must try to love him as you did your mother, and then he will love you." "But why have I not heard of him before?" asked Linton. "Why didn't Mamma and he live together as other people do?" "He had business to keep him in the north," I answered, "and your mother's health required her to reside in the south." "And why didn't Mamma speak to me about him?" persevered the child. "She often spoke of Uncle, and I learnt to love him long ago. How am I to love Papa? I don't know him." "Oh, all children love their parents." I don't know about that. Just gaslighting him. Oh well. "Your mother, perhaps, thought you would want to be with him, if she mentioned him often to you. Let us make haste. An early ride on such a beautiful morning is much preferable to an hour's more sleep." "Is she going to go with us?" he demanded. "The little girl I saw yesterday?" "Not now," replied I. "Is Uncle?" he continued. "No, I shall be your companion there," I said. Linton sank back into his pillow and fell into a brown study. Brown study. So now he's being spoken about more in racialized language after it's decided that he's going to be living with Heathcliff. Interesting. "I won't go without Uncle," he cried at length. "I can't tell where you mean to take me." I attempted to persuade him of the naughtiness of showing reluctance to meet his father. Still, he obstinately resisted any progress towards dressing, and I had to call for my master's assistance in coaxing him out of bed. The poor thing was finally got off with several delusive assurances that his absence would be short. Sad. This kid, he's just getting lied to all the time. That Mr. Edgar and Kathy would visit him. Don't promise him shit that you can't... that won't happen. Damn. And other promises equally ill-founded, which I invented and reiterated at intervals throughout the way. Nellie... The pure heather-scented air and the bright sunshine and the gentle canter of Minnie relieved his despondency after a while. He began to put questions concerning his new home and its inhabitants with greater interest and liveliness. "Is Wuthering Heights as pleasant a place as Thrushcross Grange?" he inquired, turning to take a last glance into the valley, whence a light mist mounted and formed fleecy cloud on the skirts of the blue. "It is not so buried in the trees," I replied, "and it is not quite so large, but you can see the country beautifully all round, and the air is healthier for you, fresher and drier. You will perhaps think the building old and dark at first, though it is a respectable house, the next best in the neighborhood, and you will have such nice rambles on the moors. Hareton Earnshaw. Turning the page. That is Miss Kathy's other cousin, and so yours in a manner, will show you all the sweetest spots, and you can bring a book in fine weather, and make a green hollow your study, and now and then your uncle may join you in a walk. He does frequently walk out on the hills. And what is my father like? He asked. Is he as young and handsome as uncle? He's as young, said I. Oh boy, Nellie is so racist. But he has black hair and eyes, and looks sterner, and he is taller and bigger altogether. He'll not seem to you so gentle and kind at first, perhaps, because it is not his way. Still, mind you be frank and cordial with him, and naturally he'll be fonder of you than any uncle, for you are his own. Black hair and eyes, mused Linton. I can't fancy him. Okay, he's getting prepped with the racism. Then I am not like him, am I? Not much, I answered. Not a morsel, I thought, surveying with regret the white complexion, again the proximity to whiteness, and slim frame of my companion, with his large, languid eyes. His mother's eyes, save that, unless a morbid touchiness kindled them. A moment they had not a vestige of her sparkling spirit. How strange that he should never come to see Mamma and me, he murmured. Has he never seen me? If he have, I must have been a baby. I remember not a single thing about him. Why, Master Linton, said I, 300 miles is a great distance, and 10 years seem very different in length. It's because he didn't know. To a grown-up person, compared with what they do to you, it is probable Mr. Heathcliff proposed going from summer to summer, but never found a convenient opportunity. Instead of saying that he didn't know that you existed, he was just ignoring you, is so sad. And now it is too late. Don't trouble him with questions on the subject. It will disturb him for no good. The boy was fully occupied with his own cogitations. I don't know what that means. I'm going to look that up. What is cogitations? Cogitation, the act of thinking deeply about something. Contemplation.
Cogitation.
It's like C-O-G, mind, like thought. Cognition. Pondering. Yep. The boy was fully occupied with his own cogitations for the remainder of the ride till we halted before the farmhouse garden gate. I watched to catch his impressions in his countenance. He surveyed the carved front and low-browed lattices, the straggling gooseberry bushes and crooked firs, with solemn intentness, then shook his head. His private feelings entirely disapproved of the exterior of his new abode, but he had sense to postpone complaining. There might be compensation within. Before he dismounted, I went and opened the door. It was 6:30. The family had just finished breakfast. The servant was clearing and wiping down the table. Joseph stood by his master's chair, telling some tale concerning a lame horse, and Hareton was preparing for the hayfield. "Hello, Nellie!" cried Heathcliff when he saw me. "I feared I should have to come down and fetch my property myself." So calling him property, we're not off to a great start. "You've brought it, have you? Let us see what we can make of it." He got up, and also calling him it, but treating his son like how he was treated, from what it seems. So he doesn't necessarily know any different. He got up and strode to the door. Hareton and Joseph followed in gaping curiosity. Poor Linton ran a frightened eye over the faces of the three. "Surely," said Joseph after a grave inspection, "he's swapped with ye, maester, and yon's his lass." Heathcliff, having stared his son into an egg of confusion, uttered a scornful laugh. Wait, is that how you say that word? Let's see. Ague. Okay. Malaria or some other illness involving fever and shivering. Ague. I think I always just said it as egg in my head. Fever or shivering fit. Heathcliff, having stared his son into an ague of confusion, uttered a scornful laugh. God, what a beauty! What a lovely, charming thing! He exclaimed. Haven't they reared it on snails and sour milk, Nellie? Oh, damn my soul, but that's worse than I expected. And the devil knows I was not sanguine. I would be too. Exactly. The poor kid is going through a hell of a lot. I bid the trembling and bewildered child get down and enter. He did not thoroughly comprehend the meaning of his father's speech, or whether it were intended for him. Indeed, he was not yet certain that the grim, sneering stranger was his father, but he clung to me with growing trepidation, and on Mr. Heathcliff's taking a seat and bidding him come hither, he hid his face on my shoulder and wept. Said Heathcliff, stretching out a hand and dragging him roughly between his knees, and then holding up his head by the chin. None of that nonsense. We're not going to hurt thee, Linton. Isn't that thy name? Thou art thy mother's child entirely. Where is my share in thee? Puling chicken? He took off the boy's cap and pushed back his thick flaxen curls, felt his slender arms, so flaxen is... That's more of like a blonde, right? Yeah, pale yellow. So he really is a white boy. Perceived as such. He felt his slender arms and his small fingers, during which examination Linton ceased crying and lifted his great blue eyes to inspect the inspector. Do you know me? Asked Heathcliff, having satisfied himself that the limbs were all equally frail and feeble. No, said Linton, with a gaze of vacant fear. You've heard of me, I dare say. No, he replied again. No? What a shame of your mother, never to waken your filial regard for me? You are my son, then, I'll tell you. And your mother was a wicked slut to leave you. I know he's being rude, but also, like, she didn't tell him that he had a dad, so... To leave you in ignorance of the sort of father you possessed. Now don't wince and color up, though it is something to see you have not white blood. Be a good lad, and I'll do for you. Nellie, if you be tired, meaning don't wince and color up, that, like, he actually can have, like, color in his face, that you don't have white blood. He's actually speaking in a way that's, for the first time that I've noticed, that he's talking about having color in your skin as a positive thing. Which is interesting because he's talking about his son. Be a good lad, and I'll do it for you. Nellie, if you be tired, you may sit down. If not, get home again. I guess you'll report what you hear and see to the cipher at the Grange, and this thing won't be settled while you linger about it. Well, replied I hope he'll be kind to the boy, Mr. Heathcliff, or you'll not keep him long, and he's all you have akin to the wide world that you will ever know, remember. Especially the way Nellie talks to him, talking to him like as if he is not actually in a higher class as well. That she always tries to, like, cut him down to size, essentially. I'll be very kind to him. You needn't fear, he said, laughing. Only nobody else must be kind to him. I'm jealous of monopolizing his affection. And to begin my kindness, Joseph, bring the lad some breakfast. Hareton, you infernal calf, begone to your work. Yes, Nell, he added when they were departed. My son is prospective owner of your place, and I should not wish him to die till I was certain of being his successor. Besides, he's mine, and I want the triumph of seeing my descendant fairly lord of their estates. My child hiring their children to till their father's lands for wages. He's like, I want to have some justice in this situation. He's like, I want to have complete role reversals. That is the sole consideration which can make me endure the whelp. I despise him for himself, and hate him for the memories he revives. But that consideration is sufficient. He's as safe with me, and shall be tended as carefully as your master tends his own. I have a room upstairs, furnished for him in handsome style. I engaged a tutor also to come 3 times a week in 20 miles distance to teach him what he pleases to learn. So actually getting education for him. I've ordered Hareton to obey him, and in fact, I've arranged everything with a view to preserve the superior and the gentleman in him above his associates. I do regret, however, that he so little deserves the trouble. If I wished any blessing in the world, it was to find him a worthy object of pride, and I'm bitterly disappointed with the whey-faced, whining wretch. Rude. Poor kid. While he was speaking, Joseph returned, bearing a basin of milk porridge, and placed it before Linton. He stirred round the homey mess with a look of aversion, and affirmed he could not eat it. I saw the old manservant shared largely in his master's scorn of the child, though he was compelled to retain the sentiment in his heart, because Heathcliff plainly meant his underlings to hold him in honour. "Cannot eat it?" repeated he, peering in Linton's face, and subduing his voice to a whisper, for fear of being overheard. "But Maester Hareton never ate nowt else, when he were a little un, and what were good enough for him's good enough for ye, I was rather think." "I shan't eat it," answered Linton snappishly. "Take it away." Joseph snatched up the food indignantly, and brought it to us. "Is there out ales the victuals?" he asked, thrusting the tray under Heathcliff's nose. "What should ail them?" he said. "Why," answered Joseph, "yon dainty chap says he cannot eat them, but I'll guess it's right. His mother were just so we were almost too mucky to sow to corn for making her bread." He's like, yeah, he's too uppity. That's why. He's used to upper-class food. "Don't mention his mother to me," said the master angrily. "Get him something that he can eat, that's all. What is his usual food, Nellie?" I suggested boiled milk or tea, and the housekeeper received instructions to prepare some. Come, I reflected, his father's selfishness may contribute to his comfort. He perceives his delicate constitution and the necessity of treating him tolerably. I'll console Mr. Edgar by acquainting him with the turn Heathcliff's humour has taken. Having no excuse for lingering longer, I slipped out while Linton was engaged in timidly rebuffing the advances of a friendly sheepdog. But he was too much on the alert to be cheated. As I closed the door, I heard a cry and a frantic repetition of the words, "Don't leave me! I'll not stay here! I'll not stay here!" Then the latch was raised and fell. Whoops. They did not suffer him to come forth. I mounted Minnie and urged her to a trot, and so my brief guardianship ended. Okay. That was chapter 5 and 6. Tomorrow, yay! Tomorrow, I did want to watch a video from Zateo, discussing some of their projections about what might happen with this war with Iran, get some perspective from Iranian people, and then also talk about, like, as we're introducing Linton as a character who's more effeminate. Same. Talk about how gender plays a role in colonization with patriarchy and these systems of domination without consent, and how they all play a role in the novel. And then also talk about strategies for unionizing, why it's important, how to get involved, and such. But, oh, I've started uploading VODs on YouTube. I need to put the YouTube homepage, my homepage, in the profile. But I'm uploading the VODs as well as the readings from every day, if you are interested. Okay, that's going to be it for me today. But thanks for being here. It was good chatting with you. I hope you have a good rest of your day or evening, wherever you are. And I will see you soon. Okay, bye.